25 minutes later, she was stepping off the elevator to the pediatric floor of the hospital. When she stopped at the nurse's desk, a slender woman with salt and pepper hair was talking to Rita Greenberg. Monica noticed that Rita looked relieved to see her. "You'd better speak to Sally's doctor," she told the woman. "Dr. Farrell, this is Susan Gannon." Susan turned to face Monica. "Doctor, my former husband, Peter Gannon, is the father of Sally Carter. I know he is barred from visiting her, but I am not. Will you take me to her, please?" On Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, Detective Carl Forrest was seated in his car, parked directly opposite Greenwich Village Hospital. He had worked with John Hartman before his retirement. It was Forrest who had checked for fingerprints on the picture that Hartman had brought in, the one that had been sent anonymously to Monica Farrell's office. After Monica's narrow escape from death, it was Forrest, again at Hartman's urging, who had studied the security tapes of Greenwich Village Hospital, the ones that covered the time that Monica left the hospital on Thursday evening, minutes before her encounter with the bus. Accompanying him was his partner, Jim Whelan. They were studying the pictures they had just taken of a young policewoman standing on the steps of the hospital. They had asked her to stand in the same spot where Monica had been photographed, so that they could analyze the location from which the shot had been taken. Forrest had his computer on his lap and printed out the pictures. Then, with a grunt of satisfaction, he handed them to Whelan. "Compare them, Jim," he said as he held up the snapshot that had been mailed to Monica's office. "Whoever took the picture of the doctor with the kid in her arms was probably sitting in a parked car right here. The angle is exactly right. I thought at first that John Hartman was wasting our time, but I don't think that anymore. Let's review it. Thursday evening, the hospital security cameras show the doctor coming down the steps. Next frame, we see someone getting out of his car, parked in this spot, following her down the street. This guy is wearing a hooded sweatshirt, gloves, and dark glasses, the exact description the old lady gave us. The break of the century is that 15 minutes later, the security camera shows his car being towed because the meter ran out. Now, we know it was reclaimed by Sammy Barber, a two-bit thug who was acquitted of being a hitman. Acquitted because he or one of his slimy friends either threatened or paid off jurors, Whelan remembered. They don't come any guiltier than he was. I did a lot of work on that case. I'd love to find a way to nail him now." The policewoman who had posed for the picture came over. A traffic officer, she had agreed to give up a few minutes of her break to help them out. "Did you get what you wanted?" "You bet," Forrest told her. "Thanks." "Anytime. I never thought of myself as being a model. Neither did anyone else." With a brief wave, she was on her way. After she left, Forrest turned on the ignition. "Even if we bring Sammy in for a lineup and the old lady identifies him, you know what will happen. If it got to trial, which is doubtful, a lawyer would shoot holes in her identification. It was dark. He was wearing sunglasses. His hood was pulled up. On top of that, there was a crowd on the corner. The bus was coming and people were lining up for it. She was the only one who thinks the doctor was shoved. The doctor herself claims it was an accident. Case dismissed. But if Barber was stalking her, it was because someone is paying him to do it. Does she have any idea who that could be?" Whelan asked. "John Hartman mentioned Scott Alterman. I checked him out. He's a successful lawyer, just moved to New York, but apparently about 5 years ago he was stalking Dr. Farrell in Boston. He's the only one John heard about as someone who might have a reason to take that picture of the doctor." "Or have someone like Sammy take the picture for him?" Whelan suggested. "Possibly. But where are we going with that?" Forrest asked. "If it is Alterman, he won't be the first rejected guy to order a hit on the woman who turned him down. We'll keep an eye on him and see if there's anything illegal Sammy has done at that bar where he's a bouncer that we can make stick and get him off the street." On Saturday morning, Scott Alterman followed the route Olivia Morrow had taken on the day of her death. After he left the Schwab house on Friday, he had called the driver service Olivia used and asked to speak to the chauffeur who had driven her on Tuesday. He was told that the man's name was Rob Garrigan, and he was on a job now but would call him later. Scott had gone to his office, and late in the afternoon, Garrigan had phoned back. "Like they probably told you in the office, it was a 4-hour round trip to Southampton," he said. "She didn't visit nobody. She just had me drive on the ocean block and then to a cemetery." Scott had been dismayed. "She didn't visit anybody?" "Nope. She did have me stop in front of some pretty ritzy house. Well, they're all ritzy on that block. She told me she lived there when she was a kid, not in that house, but in a cottage that was on the property. Then she had me drive to the cemetery and stop in front of a mausoleum. Is that the way you say it? Funny word, isn't it? And she just sat there and looked at it, and I could tell she felt real bad." "If you went back, could you point out the house and the mausoleum?" "Sure. I've got eyes in my head." "Did she say anything else besides the fact that she lived in that cottage when she was young? I mean about her family?" "Hardly a word. It seemed like it was an effort for her to talk. I mean, some people don't want to talk, and I always respect that. Other people like to gab, and that's okay with me too. My wife says I never shut up, and I do her a favor if I get the talk bug out of my system on the job." Now, on the way out to Southampton, Scott was realizing that Rob Garrigan, who had probably given him as much information as he knew, would be hard to silence for the rest of the drive. "You know what Long Island Expressway stands for?" Garrigan asked. "I guess not," Scott said. "Think of the initials. L-I-E spells lie. That's the Long Island Expressway. It's not an expressway. It's one long parking lot, especially in the summer. A 70-mile parking lot. I could tell you wouldn't know. You're from Boston, aren't you? I mean like the people who take a walk in the park." "I didn't realize I talked like that. Do you think I should learn to say New York?" Scott asked. "That's the way people from New Jersey say it, not New Yorkers." Scott did not know whether to be angry or amused. 8 generations of Altermans had lived in Bernardsville, New Jersey. "I'd have been brought up there if Dad hadn't taken the job in Boston after he graduated from Harvard," he thought. "Then he met Mom, and that was that. When I was a kid, I loved coming down to the big house to visit my grandparents. After they passed away, the family property had been sold, and a country club with a golf course had been built on it. Grandparents. Mine were such an important part of my life," Scott reflected. Olivia Morrow had specifically told Monica that she had known both her birth grandparents. "I bet anything that there is a link somehow to the Gannons," Scott thought. "If I could only find it for Monica." "Is it okay if I turn on the radio real low?" Garrigan asked. "That would be absolutely fine," Scott told him gratefully. Nearly an hour later, they were driving into Southampton. "The house she had me stop at was on the ocean," Garrigan said. "Maybe I told you that. Not far now." He drove for a few more minutes, then Scott felt the car slowing down and stopping. "Here we are," Garrigan announced. "It's one of the really big ones." Scott was not looking at the house. His eyes were riveted on the mailbox with the name Gannon in handsome raised letters. "I knew it! I knew it!" he thought. She was going to tell Monica something about the Gannons. There was a Ferrari sports car parked in the circular driveway. "Someone's home. Are you going in there?" Garrigan asked. "I'm going to stop in later, but first I'd like to have you show me the mausoleum that you say Ms. Morrow visited." "Sure thing. Did you ever hear the biggest benefit of living next to a cemetery?" "I don't think so." "You have quiet neighbors." Too quiet, Scott thought minutes later, as he got out of the car and stood in front of the handsome mausoleum with the name Gannon carved in stone over the archway. "I wish Alexander Gannon could talk to me now." Olivia Morrow had lived as a young child on the Gannon estate, he mused. She was 82 when she died last Wednesday. Alexander Gannon would be over 100 years old now. Monica's father was in his 70s when he died. If he was Alexander's son, he was born when Alexander was in his mid-20s. Olivia was a child at that time, so she certainly couldn't have been the mother. But what about Olivia's mother? Scott asked himself. How old was she when they lived here? She could easily have been in her 20s. Was she involved with Alex and became pregnant and gave up the baby for adoption? If so, did the Gannons buy her off? Why did Alex have that provision in his will, leaving his estate to a child if he had had one? Maybe he never knew, but simply suspected that someone who worked for the family became pregnant with his child. Maybe his parents ended the relationship and made the girl swear to keep the secret. In those days, if something like that happened, the girl was usually sent away to have the baby and paid off to keep quiet about it. With one last look at the mausoleum, Scott got back in the car. "Where to?" Garrigan asked cheerfully. "Back to the house where we just were. Let's see if the owner of that fancy sports car lives there, and if so, would be willing to chat with an unexpected visitor." On Friday afternoon, after he was forced by the police to leave his apartment, Peter Gannon found himself on the corner of 5th Avenue and 70th Street, at the door of the apartment building where he had lived with Susan for 20 years. He had given her the co-op in the divorce settlement 4 years ago, and he couldn't miss the uncomfortable expression on the face of the doorman, even though his greeting was cordial. "Mr. Gannon, how nice to see you." "Nice to see you as well, Ramon." Peter understood the reason for the man's unease. He could not allow him to enter the building without Susan's permission. "Will you call and see if my wife is in?" he asked, then wanted to bite his tongue. "I mean, will you see if Miss Gannon is in?" "Of course, sir." As he dialed the number of Susan's apartment, Peter waited nervously. "She's probably at work," he thought. "She wouldn't be home at this time on a Friday. What's the matter with me? Or better yet, what else is the matter with me? I can't think straight. What was Ramon saying?" "Miss Gannon said to go right up, sir." Peter could see the curiosity in the man's eyes. "I know I look like hell," he thought. He went into the lobby and walked across the familiar carpet to the elevator. The door was open. The operator, another long-time employee, welcomed him warmly and, without being asked, pressed the button for the 16th floor. As he rode up, Peter realized he didn't know what to expect from Susan. When he had passed a newsstand, he had seen Renee's picture and the headlines about her death on the front page of both the Post and the News. Susan must have seen the morning papers, too. She would immediately remember Renee and guess that she was the reason why he had begged her to lend him $1 million. The elevator stopped. Peter saw the operator's questioning glance as he hesitated before getting out. Then, when the door closed behind him, he stood for a full minute. Their apartment was the corner duplex. Feeling icy cold, his hands in the pockets of his leather jacket, he turned to walk toward it. The door was ajar, and before he could knock, Susan was standing in the doorway. For a long minute they looked at each other without speaking. Peter could see that she was shocked at his appearance. "I guess showering and shaving don't hide the effects of a drunk blackout," he thought. She was wearing a belted gray wool dress that accentuated her small waist. A colorful scarf was knotted around her throat. Her only jewelry was silver earrings that complemented the salt and pepper hair that had been artfully contoured to frame her face. "She looks just like what she is," Peter thought. "A wonderfully attractive, classy, intelligent woman. And in 20 years I was never smart enough to realize how lucky I was to have her." "Come in, Peter," Susan told him. She stood aside as he passed. He was certain that she wanted to avoid any attempt on his part to kiss her. "Don't worry, Susan," he thought. "I wouldn't have the nerve to try." Without speaking, he walked from the foyer to the living room. The windows looked down on Central Park. He walked over to them. "The view doesn't change," he commented, then turned to her. "Sue, I'm in a lot of trouble. I have no right to be bothering you, but I don't know who else to turn to for advice." "Sit down, Peter. You look as if you're going to cave in. I read the papers this morning. Renee Carter, the woman you were or are involved with, is the same Renee Carter who was murdered, isn't she?" Peter sat down heavily on the couch. feeling as if his legs no longer had the strength to hold him.
Yes, she is, Sue. I swear to God, I hadn't seen nor heard from her for 2 years. That was when she moved back to Vegas. I was sick of her. I knew what a horrible mistake I had made. I've regretted it and will regret it every day of my life.
Peter, according to the papers, Renee Carter has a 19-month-old child. Is she yours? It was the question Peter Gannon had hoped never to have to answer.
Yes,
he whispered.
Yes. I never wanted you to know about the baby. I knew how much the miscarriages tore you apart.
How considerate of you. Can you be sure it's yours? Bleakly, Peter looked into the scornful eyes of his former wife.
Yes, I'm sure it's mine. Renee cleverly produced the DNA reports as proof for me. I've never seen the child. I never want to see her.
Then shame on you. Susan spat out the words. She is your flesh and blood. According to the papers, she's been in critical condition in the hospital with pneumonia, and you're not the least concerned about her? What kind of monster are you?
Sue, I'm not a monster, Peter pleaded. Renee told me she had friends who were desperate for a baby, that they were substantial and fine people. I thought that was the best way to go. 2 years ago, I gave Renee $2 million so that she could have the baby and then get out of my life. But she called me 3 months ago and demanded $1 million more. That's why I asked you for a loan. I couldn't get it anyplace else.
He saw the expression on Susan's face change from scorn to alarm. Peter, when did you last see Renee Carter?
Tuesday night.
Get it out, he thought. Don't try to make it sound like anything except what it is.
Sue, I didn't have $1 million. I couldn't raise it. I brought a bag with $100,000 in cash to give her. I met Renee in a bar and told her that. She took the bag and rushed out of the bar. I followed her. I grabbed her arm and said something like, I can't get any more. She slapped me and dropped the bag. As she picked it up, I knew I was going to be sick. I'd been drinking scotches all day. I left her on the street.
What did you do then?
I blacked out. I don't know another thing until I woke up on the couch in my office the next afternoon.
Your office? Didn't someone wake you up in the morning?
No one else came in. I let everyone go. I couldn't pay anyone's salary. Sue, the cops came to my apartment today. I let them take a DNA swab. They're getting a search warrant for the apartment and the office. They made me leave my apartment.
Peter, are you telling me that you left Renee Carter on York Avenue after you had quarreled, and she slapped you and was picking up the bag with $100,000 in cash that she said wasn't enough money? And now you say that you don't remember anything until you woke up in your office and that her body was found not far from where you left her? My God, do you realize how much trouble you're in? You're not only a person of interest, you're the prime suspect.
Susan, I swear to you, I don't know what happened to her.
Peter, what you are saying is you don't know what happened. Period. Did you tell the police that Renee Carter was blackmailing you because of the foundation money and what you think Greg is up to in the market?
No, of course not. I've got to keep Greg out of this. I told them that she was after me for more money after what I gave her 2 years ago.
Peter knew he was close to tears. Not wanting to break down in front of Susan, he got to his feet.
Sorry to inflict you with all of this, Sue, he said, struggling to steady his voice. I just needed someone to talk to. You came up first on the list.
He attempted to smile.
In fact, you are the list.
That doesn't say much for you. Peter, you're not going anywhere until you've had coffee and a sandwich. When did you last eat?
I don't know. When I woke up in the office Wednesday, I went home and went to bed. I stayed home all day yesterday until I met you. Then after you blew me off, I got drunk again.
Peter, on Tuesday evening, you had already told Renee Carter you couldn't give her any more money. Why did you try to borrow from me Wednesday night?
Because I knew she wasn't finished with me, and that if she set the cops on Greg, he'd be in big trouble.
Peter, you said the police were getting a search warrant. Are they going to find anything at all in your office or apartment that might incriminate you?
Susan, absolutely not.
Do you remember if you struggled with her? Did you hit her back when she slapped you?
I swear, I never would have hurt her. I just wanted to get away from her.
Peter, you've already told the police that Renee Carter was trying to extort more money from you. Listen to me. You're going to need an attorney. I'm in corporate law, not criminal defense, but a first-year law student could shoot holes in your convenient blackout. Fortunately, they can't subpoena me as a witness because I'm an attorney, and I will tell them you spoke to me only to seek legal advice. But don't say a single word about this to anyone else or answer any more questions from the police. The police should be finished with searching the apartment by now, so after I fix you something to eat, I want you to go home and get some rest. You're going to need it. Stay there until you hear from me. I'm going to make some calls and hire the best criminal defense attorney I can find. An hour later, when he left Susan's apartment, Peter Gannon took a backward glance at the exquisitely furnished living room with its deep, comfortable matching sofas, antique carpet, and the grand piano he had bought Sue for one of their anniversaries. He thought of lying on the couch and listening to her play. She was a fine pianist, far more than a pretty good amateur, as she labeled herself.
And I gave all this up for Renee Carter, he thought. And now Renee may cost me the rest of my life. Even that wouldn't be enough for her, he thought bitterly.
When he got back to his apartment, he found it in total disarray. Every drawer had been pulled out and the contents dumped on the carpet. The contents of the refrigerator were on the countertops. Cushions from the chairs and couch had been tossed on the floor. Furniture was pushed to the center of the living room. Paintings had been removed from the walls and stacked on top of each other. A copy of the search warrant had been left on the dining room table. Like an automaton, Peter began to clean up. The physical effort helped to limber his back, cramped from inactivity.
Susan thinks I might be arrested, he thought.
The prospect seemed impossible to him.
I feel as if I'm in a bad movie. I've never lifted a finger to hurt anyone. I never even had a fight with another kid when I was growing up. Even after I knew Renee wasn't going to settle for $100,000, I still was trying to borrow money from Susan to pay her off. I wouldn't have done that if I already killed her. I wouldn't have killed her. Why can't I remember what I did after I left Renee on York Avenue?
As he put back the contents of the drawers, straightened the furniture, and rehung the pictures, his mind kept swirling with unanswered questions. Where did I go after I left Renee? Did I talk to anyone, or am I imagining it? Did I see someone who looked familiar across the street? I don't know. I just don't know. It was shortly after midnight when the concierge phoned him. "Mr. Gannon, Detectives Tucker and Flynn are here to see you."
"Send them up."
Virtually paralyzed with fear, Peter waited by the door until the bell rang. He opened it, and the two detectives, unsmiling and businesslike, entered the apartment. "Mr. Gannon," Barry Tucker said, "you are under arrest for the murder of Renee Carter. Turn around, Mr. Gannon." As he handcuffed him behind his back, Tucker began the Miranda ritual. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you." Every word was a physical blow. "You have the right to an attorney." Trying to blink back tears, Peter's mind flashed back to the moment when at that party after the opening of his play, Renee Carter had linked her arm in his and asked him if he was lonely. On Saturday morning, Ryan put his plan into motion. He got up at 7 and showered and shaved, grateful that somewhere along the way the large apartment had been renovated so that a bathroom was directly off the master bedroom and he did not have to risk bumping into Alice in the hall before he was fully dressed. Maybe she's still asleep, he hoped. But when he went out to the kitchen, she was already there, wrapped in a satin robe, wearing light makeup, every hair in place. A very pretty woman, he thought, as he forced a smile,
but she's just not for me."
"You don't give yourself a break on Saturdays and stay in bed for an extra hour or so?" she asked, her tone teasing as she poured coffee for him. He saw that fresh orange juice and a bowl of cut-up fruit were already on the breakfast table. "No, I have a lot of errands, so I want to get an early start, Alice." "Well, surely as a doctor you know that a good breakfast is the best way to start the day. I've seen the way you rush out during the week. How about poached eggs on toast?" Ryan had intended to decline, but the offer sounded good to him, and he knew he could not refuse to have something to eat without being rude. "Sounds great," he said uncomfortably. He sat at the table, sipped the orange juice, and thought, "I just want out of here. If Monica walked in right now, or if I saw her in the same situation, I know what I'd think." "I hope I didn't wake you up when I came home last night," Alice said as she broke eggs into a pan of boiling water. "I didn't hear you come in. I went to bed around 11, Ryan answered, as he thought about how he had spent the previous evening. "I went to a lousy movie because I didn't want to be here with you. Turns out I could have come straight home the way I wanted to, since you weren't here anyway." Home, he thought. We both used the word home just now. Isn't that cute? "You haven't asked, but I'm going to tell you anyhow what I was doing and why it's so important," Alice said as she put bread in the toaster. "I'm asking now." Ryan tried to sound interested. "Well, I was at a dinner given by the publisher of Everyone magazine. It was for the retiring editor of the celebrity beauty section. He offered me her job. That means I get to pick the celebrities I want to feature and analyze what they're wearing, their hairstyles and makeup. It's the kind of job I've been hoping for ever since I got into the beauty and fashion business." "I'm really delighted for you, Alice," Ryan said sincerely. "I have friends in the publishing world, and it's a tough field to crack. Little as I know about Everyone magazine, I do know it's one of the most successful ones. I see it everywhere." "As you know, I'm going back to Atlanta today," Alice continued. "I'm going to have to scramble to get an agent to rent my apartment there and put my furniture into storage and get my clothes packed and all the rest that goes with moving. They want me to start in 2 weeks. Would you mind very much if your stepsister comes back here until I can find my own place? It's a big apartment, and I promise I won't be in your way." Stepsister? Oh, she told the doorman I was her stepbrother, Ryan remembered. "Alice, people share apartments all the time in New York, and in every big city, I guess, but I'm long overdue to have a place of my own. That's what I'm going to be looking for today, so I'm sure I'll be gone when you get back." I will be gone too, he thought, even if it's to a residential hotel. "Well, I hope that doesn't mean you won't come for a cocktail or dinner sometime. I pride myself on being a good hostess, and I have some really interesting friends in New York." Alice put the plate of poached eggs in front of him and refilled his coffee cup. Ryan made the only response possible. "Of course I'll come if I'm invited." "Alice is very nice, very attractive, and I'm sure very smart," he thought. If it weren't for Monica, it might be different, but it's not going to be different. Giving Monica back the file on Monday will be an excuse to talk to her and apologize for making her feel uncomfortable in front of the nurses. When she was here that Friday, she enjoyed herself. I know she did. "Well, how are my eggs?" Alice asked. "I mean, they're done to perfection, don't you agree?" "Absolutely," Ryan agreed hastily. "Many thanks, Alice. And now I'm off. I have to stop at the hospital." I do have to stop in my office there, he thought. I want to see the Michael O'Keefe file. The O'Keefe's address and phone number are in it. I am going to do some apartment hunting today, but I'm also going to call and ask if I can visit Michael. I want to see him for myself before I ask to testify in Sister Catherine's beatification process as an expert witness. With a final goodbye to Alice and her unwanted kiss on the lips, Ryan went down in the elevator. As it descended, he remembered a fragment of the dream he had had during the night. Monica had been in it somehow. No reason she wouldn't be, he thought. Ever since she was almost hit by that bus, I've been sick with worry about her. But it was not just that she was in it. He remembered that she had been speaking to a nun.
Good Lord, he thought. Now I'm dreaming about Sister Catherine, too.
At 3 o'clock, Dr. Douglas Langdon and Dr. Clayton Hadley met for a late lunch at the St. Regis Hotel. They decided to select from the light menu served in the King Cole bar and chose a table out of any possible earshot of the few other diners. "Physician, heal thyself," Langdon said dryly. "For God's sake, Clay, things are bad enough without you falling apart. You look awful."
"Easy for you to say," Hadley shot back. "You weren't at the funeral with Monica Farrell staring at you. You didn't pick up the urn at the crematorium and escort it to the cemetery."
"It was a nice show of respect," Langdon told him. "That's important now."
"I told you we should have given Peter the money he needed to pay off Carter," Hadley complained.
"You know perfectly well the foundation couldn't produce that much, and anyway, she'd have been back for more in another month. When all is said and done, Peter did us a favor by killing her."
"Have you talked to Greg today?" Hadley asked. "I've been afraid to call him."
"Of course I've spoken to him. We wrote a statement together for the press, the usual party line. We firmly stand behind Peter Gannon, who is innocent of these outrageous charges. We are confident that he will be fully vindicated."
"Fully vindicated? They found the $100,000 he claimed to have given that Carter woman hidden in his office. That was in the newspaper."
"Clay, what did you expect us to say in the press release? That we knew how desperate Peter was when he tried to get us to release foundation money to him? It was Greg who tried to convince him that if it came out that Renee Carter had his child, so what? What's the big deal? That kind of stuff is in the papers every day. Unfortunately, Peter didn't see it that way, and he snapped. It happens." Both men fell silent as the waiter approached them. "Another round?" he suggested.
"Yes," Hadley said, as he drained the last of his vodka on the rocks.
"Just coffee for me," Langdon said. "And we'd better order now. What are you having, Clay?"
"Sliders."
"And I'll have the tuna salad."
When the waiter left, Langdon remarked,
"Clay, you're putting on more weight. May I point out that the sliders, those 3 small hamburgers with cheese, don't look like much, but they have a lot of calories. As a psychiatrist, I warn you that you are compensating for stress by overeating."
Hadley stared at him. "Doug, sometimes I don't believe you. Everything could fall apart, and we could both end up in prison, and you're lecturing me about calories?"
"Well, I actually do have more serious concerns. As we both know, we handled the first problem, Olivia Morrow, before she could hurt us. Monica Farrell, our second problem, will not be with us much longer. Soon we will announce that due to some unwise investments, the Gannon Foundation will be closing down. Greg can handle the paperwork for that. Then I intend to retire and enjoy the rest of my life in places like the south of France, with great gratitude to the largesse of the Gannon Foundation. I suggest you start thinking in the same vein." Feeling the vibration of his cell phone, Langdon reached into his pocket. He glanced at the phone number that appeared on the screen and quickly answered. "Hello, I'm having lunch with Clay." As Langdon listened to the caller, Hadley watched his expression darken. "You're right. It's a problem. I'll get back to you." Langdon snapped the cell phone shut. He looked at Hadley. "Maybe you're right to worry. We're not out of the woods yet. That guy Alterman, who was nosing around the Schwab house yesterday, was in Southampton today. He's already made the connection between Morrow and the Gannons. If he keeps digging, it's all over." Another person will have to die. Clay Hadley thought of the frightened look on the face of Olivia Morrow just before he held the pillow over her head.
"What are we going to do?"
he asked. "We don't have to do anything," Langdon replied coldly. "It's already being taken care of." After sharing coffee with Monica and Nan following Olivia Morrow's funeral mass, Sophie Rutkowski went home to her nearby apartment, the memory of her many years with Olivia paramount in her mind.
"I wish I had been there when she died,"
Sophie thought, as she changed from her good slacks and jacket into the sweatshirt and cotton pants that were her work clothes.
It's such a shame she was alone. When I go, I know my children will be around to say goodbye. If they get any warning that I am dying, nothing on earth would keep them away. Dr. Farrell, what a lovely-looking girl she is. Hard to believe she's a doctor and very highly respected, according to what they wrote in the paper after that bus almost killed her. Miss Morrow didn't have a single family member at the funeral. Father Dunlap even mentioned that in his sermon. He spoke so nicely about Miss Morrow. Dr. Farrell was so disappointed when I couldn't tell her what Miss Morrow meant when she said she knew the doctor's grandparents. Dr. Farrell has no family either. Ah, dear God. People have so many problems, and it's hard to face them alone.
On that somber note, Sophie picked up her knitting needles. She was making a sweater for her newest grandchild and had a spare half hour until it was time to go to the one job she didn't like. It was at Schwab House on Saturday afternoons, starting at 1 o'clock, in an apartment 3 floors down from the one where Olivia Morrow had lived. The couple who owned it were both writers who worked at home. The reason they liked to have their apartment cleaned on Saturday afternoon was because by noon they were on their way to their country home in Washington, Connecticut. Sophie continued at the job for only one reason. They paid her double to give up her Saturdays, and with 15 grandchildren, that money made it possible for her to do all the little extras for them their parents couldn't afford.
Even so, it gets harder and harder to work here, Sophie thought, as at 1 o'clock promptly she put her key in the door of the apartment. Those two are nothing like Miss Morrow, she told herself, not for the first time.
A few minutes later, she started to empty overflowing wastebaskets, pick heaps of damp towels off the bathroom floor, and clear the refrigerator of half-empty cartons of Chinese food.
There's a word for them, she sighed. Slobs.
At 6 o'clock, when she left, the apartment was spotless. The dishwasher had been emptied, the laundry folded in the linen closet, the shades drawn exactly halfway down in all 5 rooms.
They tell me how nice it is to come home on Monday and find it like this, Sophie thought. Why don't they try keeping it like this? Miss Morrow's apartment, she sighed. People would be going through it. It's such a nice one. A lot of people will want to buy it.
Miss Morrow had told her that Dr. Hadley would take care of everything. As Sophie pressed the button for the elevator, a thought occurred to her.
If Miss Morrow had bled on the pillow when she bit her lip, the soiled pillowcase would be in the laundry bag. And what about the bed? When they took away poor Miss Morrow's body, I bet nobody bothered to make the bed. I don't want strangers to go into her home and see it with an unmade bed and a soiled pillowcase in the laundry bag, she thought.
The elevator came. She pushed the button to go up to the 14th floor.
I have a key to her apartment, she thought. I'm going to do the last thing I can ever do for the poor soul. Change her sheets. Take that soiled pillowcase home. Launder it. Make her bed and put the spread on so that whoever goes into her apartment can appreciate what it looked like when she lived in it.
Comforted at the thought that she could offer one final service to a lady who had been very kind to her, Sophie got off on the 14th floor, took out her key, and opened the door of Olivia Morrow's apartment. With mixed emotions, but believing that she was genuinely concerned, Monica took Susan Gannon to Sally's crib. Sally's eyes were open, and she was holding a nearly full bottle of water. The oxygen mask had been replaced by tubes in her nostrils. At the sight of Monica, she struggled to her feet and raised her arms.
Money! Money!
But when Monica picked her up, she began to punch at her with small fists.
Oh, come on, Sally, Monica said soothingly. I know you're mad at me, but I couldn't help hurting you with those needles. I had to make you get better.
The intensive care nurse held the chart for her. As I told you when you phoned, Doctor, Sally had a pretty good night. She hates the IV, of course, and fought it until she fell asleep. She did drink her bottle this morning and ate a little fruit. Susan had been standing a few feet away.
Does she still have pneumonia? She asked quietly.
There's still some fluid in her lungs, Monica said, but thank God she's off the critical list. When the babysitter brought her in on Thursday morning, I was afraid we were going to lose this little girl. We couldn't let that happen, could we, Sally?" Sally's fist stopped flailing, and she laid her head on Monica's shoulder. "She's the image of her father," Susan said softly. "How long will she be in the hospital?" "For another week at least," Monica said. "Then what?" Susan asked. "Unless some relative comes to claim her, she'll be put into a foster home, at least temporarily." "I see. Thank you, Doctor." Abruptly, Susan Gannon turned and walked quickly down the corridor. It was clear to Monica that she was becoming very emotional and was eager to get away. After Monica examined Sally and put her back in the crib, wailing in protest, and then reconnected the IV, she checked her 2 other young patients. One of them was a 6-year-old boy who had a bad strep throat. He was surrounded by his parents, big brothers, and grandmother. Books and games were piled on the windowsill. "I think I should keep you here for a couple of more days, Bobby, so you can read all those books," she told him as she signed his discharge papers. At his alarmed look, she said, "Just kidding. You're out of here." 4-year-old Rachel, who had been admitted with bronchitis, was her other patient. She too was recovered enough to go home. "And you two had both better get some rest," Monica told the weary-looking parents. She knew that neither one of them had left Rachel's side since she'd been brought to the hospital 4 days ago. Bobby and Rachel were never really in danger, she thought. Hospitalizing them was only a precaution, but Sally almost didn't make it. The other kids have families who haven't left them alone for 1 single minute. Sally's only visitors have been her babysitter, who knew her for only a week, and the ex-wife of her father, who is now suspected of murdering Sally's mother. In the hospital lobby, Monica bought the Post and the News, and on the way home in the cab, she read the stories behind the headlines about Peter Gannon. The large gift bag Gannon claimed he had given Renee Carter had been found crumpled in his wastebasket. $100,000 in $100 bills, the money that had been in the gift bag, was hidden in the false bottom of his desk drawer. He's guilty as sin, Monica thought. No one in that family will ever want Renee Carter's baby. According to these stories, Peter Gannon has never even laid eyes on her. Oh, God, with all the people who yearn for a child, why did Sally have to be born to these people? But Sally would not be Sally if she were not the offspring of Peter Gannon and Renee Carter. No matter what kind of people they are or were, she is a beautiful, sweet little girl. "We're here, miss," the cabbie said. Monica looked up, startled. "Oh, of course." She paid the fare, tipped generously, and went up the steps, key in hand. She opened the outer door, used the key for the inner door to the vestibule, and walked down the hallway to her apartment. It was only when she was inside and had dropped her shoulder bag and the newspapers on the chair that the events of the past few days flooded through her mind. She stared at the worn shoulder bag she had been using in place of the new one that had been crushed by the bus. She felt the panic of that awful moment again when the bus was rushing at her. Then she thought of her intense disappointment that Olivia Morrow had died only hours before they were to meet, of her futile attempt to find a possible confidant of Morrow's at the funeral mass, and finally of the emotional pain of learning that Ryan was involved with another woman. A feeling of intense sadness enveloped her. Close to tears, she went into the kitchen, put on the kettle, and looked in the refrigerator for salad makings. "I'm more banged up than I realized," she thought. "My back and shoulders are sore and aching. There's something else," she told herself. "What is it? It has to do with Sally. Something I said this morning. What was it? Let it go," she thought. "If it's important, it will come back." "There's something I do know is important," she mused as she opened a can of crab meat. "The meeting at the Gannon Foundation has been set for Tuesday. I wonder if they'll try to cancel it with all this going on. We need the $15 million they promised us for the addition to the hospital. We need that new pediatric wing that's going to be a part of it. Isn't it incredible that one of the Gannons is Sally's father?" The salad and 2 cups of tea made Monica feel a bit better. She knew that her land phone was backed up with calls from her friends who had heard about the bus incident. With the pad in hand, she listened to the messages. They all ran in a similar vein, how concerned and shocked they were at her narrow escape from the bus, and was there any truth to that old lady's story that she had been pushed? 3 of her callers wanted her to stay at their apartments in case she was being stalked. Monica began to return the calls. She reached 6 of her friends and left messages for the others, and she declined several invitations to join them for dinner, even though she had no plans for the evening. When she was finished, she went into the bathroom, undressed, and got into the jacuzzi. For 45 minutes she relaxed in the soothing warm water and began to feel the strain ease from her bruised body. She had planned to put on comfortable slacks and a sweater and take a long walk, but the almost sleepless night was taking its toll on her. Instead, she lay on the bed, pulled the comforter over her, and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the slanting shadows told her it was late afternoon. For a few minutes she stayed wrapped in the comforter, feeling more in focus. I'm glad I don't have plans, she thought. I haven't seen a good movie in ages. I'll find one, go to an early show by myself, and grab something to eat on the way back. I really don't feel like taking a walk anymore, but I do want to get some fresh air. She pushed her feet into chenille slippers, walked from the bedroom to the kitchen, opened the back door to the small patio, and stepped outside. It was chilly, and the robe that had felt so comfortable was no match for the outside temperature. A couple of deep breaths, she thought, and that's it. Then, as she glanced around, her eyes focused on the decorative water can that stood to the left of the door. It had been moved. She was sure of it. She always left it placed on the one patio stone that was badly cracked. It was heavy enough so that even a strong wind wouldn't move it. Now it was halfway onto the next stone. But it hadn't been like that yesterday. Before I left for the funeral mass, I came out on the patio, she thought. I'd slept so badly I felt groggy and wanted fresh air. I'm sure I remember looking at the can and thinking that I should get around to replacing the broken stone. Or maybe Lucy moved it, if she swept the patio when she was here yesterday. Suddenly shivering, Monica went back into the kitchen, pulled the door closed behind her, and slid the bolt into the lock position. I always mean to leave the bolt fastened, she thought nervously, but it hadn't been fastened just now. Sometimes, like yesterday, when I go outside for a few minutes, I forget to slide the bolt. I must have done that yesterday. After I finally fell asleep last night, I woke up so suddenly. Was it because I heard a sound that startled me awake? If I had been in a sound sleep and hadn't turned on the light, would someone have tried to come in? Had someone been out there? The incongruous thought ran through her mind that the reason she hadn't slept well had a name. It was Ryan Jenner. Sammy Barber worked as a bouncer at the Rough Stuff bar from 9 p.m. till closing. The so-called nightclub was basically a strip joint, and Sammy's job was to make sure none of the drunks got out of hand. He also had to protect the D-list celebrities and their hangers-on from being bothered by jerks who tried to get too close to their tables and slobber over them. It was a job that had lousy pay, but it kept his profile low. It also meant that he could sleep late, unless he had been hired to do a hit job and had to tail someone until he got his chance to make that target disappear. On Saturday evening, Sammy was in a foul mood. The first bungled attempt to kill Farrell had left him unsure of himself for the first time in years, and the fact that the old crow had seen him push Farrell and could describe him was scary. In the last couple of years, he had bumped 2 people onto train tracks without anyone suspecting they hadn't fallen accidentally. Then, yesterday afternoon, from the alleyway behind her house, using a long-distance lens, he had taken a picture of Farrell's back door. When he developed it, he could see that the top half of the door consisted of squares of glass covered by a metal grill. The grill was a laugh. He could see that it would be easy to cut out the pane nearest the lock and reach his hand in to turn the knob. If there was a security bolt, He'd just have to cut another pane to get to it. Simple stuff. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he had gone through the alleyway, hoisted himself over Farrell's joke of a fence, and had taken out his glass cutter. 1 minute more and he'd have been inside her apartment, but in the dark he hadn't seen whatever it was that had caused him to stumble. It was heavy, and he didn't knock it over, but it almost made him lose his balance. His foot hit it hard and gave it a push, and it made a scraping sound on the patio. It was probably one of those stupid lawn statues.
Farrell had good ears if she had heard it, Sammy thought, and I guess she did, because the next thing I knew, a light went on inside the apartment. That was it for that plan.
Restlessly, Sammy began to consider alternate ways to get at Farrell, but then his eyes narrowed. The place was starting to fill up with the usual losers, but 2 guys in business suits were being led to a table.
They're cops, Sammy thought. They might as well be wearing their badges.
It was obvious that the waiter who seated them knew that too. He looked across the room at Sammy, who nodded, meaning he'd spotted them. Some jerk who'd been pretty loaded when he came in was staggering to his feet. Sammy knew he was headed for the D-list rapper who was sitting with his groupies in the celebrity section. The drunk had been trying to get that guy's attention for the last half hour. In an instant, Sammy was on his feet, and with quick steps, surprising for his bulk, was at the drunk's side.
"Sir, please stay right here."
As he spoke, he squeezed the guy's arm hard enough to make him get the point.
"But I just want to pay my respects."
He looked up into Sammy's face, and his vacant expression changed into a frightened stare.
Okay, pal, don't want to make problems."
He slumped back into his seat. As Sammy turned to go back to his table, one of the 2 men he'd spotted as cops signaled to him.
"Here it comes,"
Sammy thought as he made his way across the room.
"Pull up a chair, Sammy,"
Detective Forrest invited, as he and Detective Whelan passed their cards across the table to him. Sammy glanced at them, then looked quickly at Whelan, remembering that he had been the lead detective on his case and a witness at his trial. He could still remember the disgusted look on Whelan's face when he was acquitted.
"Nice to see you again," he told him.
"Glad you remember me, Sammy," Whelan said. "But you always did have a way with words."
"This joint is clean. Don't waste your time looking for trouble," Sammy snapped.
"Sammy, we know this dump could serve as a daycare center," Forrest told him. "We're only interested in you. Why did you bother to change from your sweatsuit to your version of dress-up clothes when you picked up your car at the pound? You remember, Thursday, you were in such a hurry to follow Dr. Farrell when she left the hospital that you didn't even take time to feed the meter."
Sammy had been questioned enough in the past by cops that he had trained himself never to appear to be nervous, but he had a sick feeling in the pit of his stomach this time.
"I don't know what you're talking about," he mumbled.
"We all know what I'm talking about, Sammy," Forrest told him. "We hope nothing happens to Monica Farrell, because if it does, Sammy, you'll think you were caught in the tsunami. On the other hand, we'd be very interested to know who hired you."
"Sammy," Whelan asked, "why were you parked in front of the hospital? Just in case you forgot, as Carl just told you, the security cameras show your car being hauled away."
"Not feeding the meter cost me big bucks, and no one ever mentioned that it was a crime. And when you look at it, it helps the city. All those extra bucks, you know what I mean?"
Sammy was beginning to feel confident.
"They're trying to rattle me," he thought scornfully. "They're trying to get me to say something stupid. They wouldn't talk to me like this if they could prove anything."
"By any chance, do you know Dr. Monica Farrell?"
Detective Forrest asked.
"Doctor who?"
"She's the young woman who fell or was pushed in front of a bus the other night. It was in all the papers."
"Don't get much chance to read the papers," Sammy said.
"You should. They keep you abreast of current events."
Forrest and Whelan stood up together.
"Always interesting to chat with you, Sammy."
Sammy watched as the 2 detectives worked their way through the now crowded tables to the exit.
"I can't be the one to take Farrell out," he thought. "I've got to hand off the job, and I know just the right guy to take my place. I'll offer Larry 100 grand. He'll snap at it.
But I'll make sure it happens while I'm at work so I have a rock-solid alibi. Then those cops will be off my back, and I still come out ahead. I got paid $1 million to do it, and I subcontract the job for 1/10 of that."
Smiling at the thought, but with a sense of failure, Sammy admitted to himself that for the first time in his long career as a hitman, he had bungled 2 attempts to carry out his contract to eliminate an unwanted problem.
"Maybe it is time to quit," he thought, "but not before I see this one through. Like I told Dougie, I always keep my word."
Tony, Rosalie, and little Carlos Garcia went for a drive on Saturday afternoon. They were on their way to visit Rosalie's sister Marie and her husband Ted Simmons at their home in Bayshore, Long Island. Tony had been working nonstop for almost 2 weeks between the chauffeuring jobs and events at the Waldorf where he was a waiter. As he explained to Rosalie, the minute October came, all the big charities had their black-tie dinners.
"Sometimes I hear the people I'm driving talk about how many of these affairs they've gone to in a week," Tony told Rosalie, "and don't think they're cheap."
But this Saturday he was off, and it was a nice day to drive to Bayshore. Tony liked his in-laws. Marie and Ted had 3 kids, a little older than Carlos, and Ted's mother and brother would be there as well. Ted had opened a hardware store in Bayshore and was doing great. Their house was a big colonial, and they had a fenced-in yard where Carlos and his cousins could run around with no one worrying about the traffic.
"It's going to be so much fun today, Tony," Rosalie said happily as they emerged from the gloom of the Midtown Tunnel onto the expressway. "I was so scared when the baby got that terrible cold this week, but he hasn't even sneezed for 4 days."
She looked back over her shoulder.
"Have you, love?"
she asked Carlos, who was securely ensconced in his car seat.
No,
Carlos responded in a sing-song voice.
"Boy, is that ever his new word," Rosalie laughed.
"It's his only word these days," Tony answered, then thought of something he'd been meaning to tell his wife.
"Rosie, I told you about that nice old woman I drove 2 weeks ago to that cemetery in Rhinebeck. She's the one who said she knew Dr. Monica's grandmother. I saw in the paper yesterday that she had died. She's being buried today."
"That's too bad, Tony."
"I really liked her."
"Oh, God!"
Tony slammed his foot on the accelerator. In the midst of the heavy traffic, the car had stopped dead. Frantically, he turned the key in the ignition as the screeching of brakes from the truck behind him warned him that they were going to be hit.
"No!"
he shouted. Rosalie turned to look at Carlos.
"Oh, my God!"
she wailed. As Rosalie screamed, they felt a bump that shook them back and forth, but the driver of the truck had managed to brake and slow down before he hit them. Shaking with relief, they turned to look at their 2-year-old son. Totally unruffled, Carlos was trying to climb out of his car seat.
"He thinks we're there,"
Tony said, his voice quivering, his hands still clutching the wheel. A moment later, still shaking, he opened the door of the car to greet the man whose quick reaction had saved their lives. 3 hours later, they were in Ted and Marie's house in Bayshore at the dining room table. It had taken 40 minutes for the tow truck to arrive. They had caused a massive traffic delay on the expressway. Ted had driven over to pick them up at the service station where they were stranded. The awareness that if the driver behind them had been tailgating, or if he'd been unable to stop, they might be dead, filled all the adults at the table, Rosie and Tony, Marie and Ted, Ted's mother and brother, with a profound sense of gratitude.
"It could have been so different,"
Rosalie said as she glanced out the windows. One of his big cousins was pushing a delighted Carlos on the swing.
"It could still be so different if you don't get rid of that old car of yours, Tony,"
Ted, a heavy-set man with a decisive manner, said bluntly.
"You've been nursing that rattletrap much too long. I know you've been putting off buying a new car, and I know why. All those medical bills for Carlos have been burying you. But he didn't beat leukemia so that all of you could be killed in an accident. Look around for a decent car, okay? I'll lend you the money."
Tony looked gratefully at his brother-in-law. He knew that Ted might say that he'd lend the money, but he also knew he would never let him pay it back.
I know you're right, Ted, he agreed. I'm not putting my family in that old heap again. Even before it broke down, I was thinking about a car that would be perfect for us, and it can't be too expensive. It's a 10-year-old Cadillac. I drove the old lady who owned it a couple of weeks ago. It was a pretty long trip. You know I know cars. This one is in perfect condition. It's probably heavier on the gas than the new ones, but I bet I could get it at book value, which can't be much. Tony, you mean the lady we were talking about on the way out? Rosalie asked. The lady whose funeral was today? Yes, Ms. Morrow. It's her car that's probably going to be for sale. Look into it, Tony, Ted said. Don't waste time. There isn't much of a market for a 10-year-old caddy. You'll probably get it. I'll go to her apartment building. Someone there can probably tell me who to call about it, Tony promised. I really liked Ms. Morrow, and I have the feeling that she liked me. And I have the crazy hunch that she'd want me to have her car, he thought. Peter Gannon went through the shocking ritual of being fingerprinted, having his mug shot taken, being strip-searched, and finally led to a cell in the Tombs, the crowded and noisy jail where prisoners awaiting trial in Manhattan were incarcerated. With every inch of his being, he wanted to protest his innocence, to shout to everyone within earshot that he could never hurt Renee, no matter how much he hated her. On Saturday morning, he read in his cellmate's newspaper that the shopping bag and money had been found in his office. Too numb for coherent thought, he sat in the cell until late Saturday afternoon, when the lawyer Susan had found for him came to see him. He introduced himself as he handed Peter his card. "I'm Harvey Roth," he said, his tone of voice low but resonant. Peter looked at him, still feeling as if he was experiencing a nightmare. Roth was a compact man with iron-gray hair and rimless glasses framing a thin face. He was dressed in a dark blue suit with a blue shirt and tie. "Are you expensive?" Peter asked. "I have to tell you straight up that I'm broke." "I am expensive," Roth answered mildly. "Your ex-wife Susan has paid the retainer for my services and guaranteed all the costs of defending you." Susan did that? Peter thought. It was one more whiplash reminder of the kind of person she was, and that he had traded her for Renee Carter. "Mr. Gannon, I assume you know that the money you claimed was in Renee Carter's possession was hidden in the false bottom of your desk drawer?" Roth asked. "I didn't even know that any drawer in my desk had a false bottom," Peter said, his voice a monotone. At the incredulous look on Harvey Roth's face, Peter felt as if he were caught in quicksand and sinking into it even deeper. 4 years ago, when the Gannon Foundation and my brother Greg's investment firm moved to the Time Warner Center, a decorator was hired to redo the offices over from scratch. I asked that whoever was hired also take care of my new theater production office. At that time, I was doing well, and I had a suite on West 51st Street. 2 years ago, when I downsized, I got rid of a lot of the furniture, but kept the desk. No one ever told me about the false bottom in it." "Who was the decorator?" Roth asked. "I don't know her name." "You didn't have meetings with her? She didn't show you any sketches or samples?" "I'm not a detail man," Peter said wearily. "I liked what she was doing at the offices in Time Warner." "Didn't you talk to her about how much the project would cost?" Roth asked. "The foundation paid for it because it was sponsoring my theater projects. What I mean is, the foundation voted a grant that included the expenses of my office." "I see, Mr. Gannon. Then you claim you never knew there was a false bottom in your desk?" I swear I didn't know that." Peter buried his face in his hands, hoping to shut himself away from the persistent questions Harvey Roth was asking him. "And you don't know the name of the decorator who bought the desk for your office?" "No, I don't," Peter said wearily. "Let me say it again. I don't know her name. I asked Greg's secretary to have her take care of my new production office. I don't think I even met the woman. She did the job while I was away with Renee." "Where did we go that time?" he wondered. "Oh, I remember. Paradise Island." He managed to choke back a desperate fit of laughter. "How can I learn who the decorator is?" Roth persisted.
The secretary at my brother's office would know. She handles that kind of thing.
What is her name?
Esther Chambers.
I'll talk to her.
Peter looked at Roth. He thinks I'm lying. He thinks I killed Renee.
Peter knew he had to ask the questions that had been swirling through his mind during the sleepless night in the cell.
If I told someone that I thought, let's say it straight, that I knew my brother was doing insider trading, would that person have an obligation to report it to the SEC?
Read the facts about the master financial crook, Bernie Madoff, Mr. Gannon, Roth said matter-of-factly. When his sons learned what he was doing, they knew they had to report it immediately. Of course, they were employees of his firm, so that changes the picture. It depends on the person to whom you disclose that information.
I can't drag her into it, Peter thought.
Mr. Gannon, why did you say you're sure your brother was involved in insider trading?
A couple of years ago, at a cocktail party for the Wall Street types, I overheard a guy from Ankofsky Oil and Gas thank Greg for the money. He told Greg he had been able to take the kids to Europe for their spring break. That was about a month after Ankofsky was taken over by Elmo Oil and Gas, and the stock tripled.
What was your brother's response? Roth asked.
He went wild. He said something like, "Shut up, you fool, and get out of here."
Did your brother know you had overheard that conversation?
No, he didn't. I was standing behind him. I didn't want him to know that I heard it. But I do know that Greg's hedge fund made a fortune on that takeover. It's not that everything isn't bad enough already, but could criminal charges be filed against me if Greg is ever caught and it came out that I knew what he was up to?
He saw the contempt in Harvey Roth's eyes.
Mr. Gannon, I would suggest that you concentrate on assisting me in preparing a defense for you on the charge of murder. I will do everything in my power to give you the best defense I can, but it would be most helpful if you can try to recall what happened in those 15 hours between the time you blacked out and the time you woke up on your couch. Let's talk about the shopping bag that contained the money. One that fits the exact description of the one you told the police that you gave Ms. Carter was found in the wastebasket under your desk.
Why would I hide the money and leave the shopping bag where anyone could find it?
Peter asked with a spark of anger. Roth nodded.
That has occurred to me. On the other hand, by your own admission, you were drunk. Let me tell you how we are going to proceed. Our investigative staff will go to the bar where you met Ms. Carter and question any patrons we can learn were there. They will also go to other bars in the area. We hope we may find somebody who saw you alone after you left Ms. Carter.
If I left Ms. Carter, you mean, Peter said. That is really what you're saying, isn't it?
Without answering, Roth got up to leave.
We are trying to get your bail reduced from $5 million to $2 million.
I think my brother will put it up for me, Peter said.
I hope so. If not, there is another source who will guarantee it.
Susan? Peter asked.
Yes. Against all odds, she believes firmly in your innocence. You are a very fortunate man, Mr. Gannon, to have a champion like Susan in your corner.
Peter watched Roth as he walked away from him, then felt a tap on his shoulder.
Let's go,
the guard ordered brusquely. On Saturday night, before she went to bed, Monica had double-locked and bolted the door to the patio, then wedged a chair under the knob on the kitchen side. She had talked to some of her friends and asked about their alarm systems, and afterward she left an urgent message to one company asking for the immediate installation of a state-of-the-art system, including security cameras on the patio. That done, she hoped to feel somewhat more secure. But her dreams had been filled with memories of her father. Fragmented as they were, she remembered that in one of them she had been with him in St. Patrick's Cathedral. She woke with the sensation of his hand in hers. Did I ever really appreciate him? She asked herself as she got up and began to make coffee. Looking back, I can begin to understand how much he loved Mom. He never looked at another woman after she died, and he was such a handsome man. That year that she was so sick, I was 10 years old. I never wanted to go anywhere or do anything. I just wanted to come straight from school to be with her.
After she was gone, Dad made me join school activities, and that first year he brought me to New York on so many weekends. We went to plays and concerts and museums and did the fun touristy stuff. But we were both so sad about Mom. He was a great storyteller, Monica remembered with a smile, as she decided to boil an egg and have a slice of whole wheat toast instead of an English muffin. When we went to Rockefeller Center at Christmas time, he told me all about the first tree that was ever put up there. It was a little one the workmen had put up because it was during the Depression and they were so grateful just to have jobs. He knew the history behind every place we visited. He loved history, but he didn't have any concept of his background, his own history. Knowing that I was so close to learning about it has finally made me understand how important that was to him. I used to joke with him about it. Dad, you may be the illegitimate son of the Duke of Windsor. What would Queen Elizabeth think about that? I thought I was being funny. If only Olivia Morrow had lived one more day. If only she had lived one more day. While the egg boiled, Monica called the hospital. Sally had slept through the night. Her temperature was only slightly elevated. She hadn't coughed much. "Every day she's so much better, doctor," the nurse reported happily. "But you should know that some reporters were trying to get up here to take her picture. The security desk got rid of them." "I would hope so," Monica said fervently. "You have my cell phone. Call if there's any change with Sally. And if any reporters manage to sneak upstairs, don't let them anywhere near Sally." Shaking her head, she scooped the egg into a cup and put it on a plate with the toast. The thoughts of her father would not leave her mind. "It's Sunday morning. Dad and I always went to St. Patrick's for the 10:15 Mass there when we came to New York for the weekend," she remembered. "And after that we'd have brunch, and it was his surprise to me where we were going for the afternoon. Being away from home and doing different things like that helped both of us." "Maybe I'll go to the 10:15 at the cathedral," she mused. "It would make me feel closer to Dad. I need that feeling right now." I wonder what Ryan and his girlfriend are planning to do today. "Stop it," Monica warned herself. "Make some plans for your own afternoon. Going to that movie last night was one miserable letdown. It was terrible. What do the critics see in something that makes absolutely no sense? Maybe I'll call a few people, and if they're free, have them in for dinner. I haven't cooked for company in the last 3 weeks. I always love doing that, but these past few weeks have been so crazy." But somehow the idea was not appealing. "But I will go to St. Pat's this morning," she decided 15 minutes later, as she finished a second cup of coffee, enjoying the luxury of lingering over it as she read the newspapers that had been delivered to the door. At 10:15 she was in the cathedral, kneeling in a pew toward the front left side of the main altar, the area that her father had always chosen. "Yesterday at this time I was in St. Vincent's, listening to Father Dunlap eulogize Olivia Morrow, then talk about me. No one could help, and I guess no one ever will. I know what I was trying to remember that had to do with Sally," she suddenly recalled. "It's that I told Susan Gannon Sally almost didn't make it. It wasn't by a miracle or the power of prayer that Sally survived. The reason is that the kid who was her babysitter was smart enough to bring her to the hospital in time, and that we had the medicine to save her." The choir was singing, "I Have Heard You Calling in the Night." "I guess I've answered enough calls in the night," Monica thought wryly. "I went to that beatification hearing and testified that there had to be some medical reason why Michael O'Keefe is still alive. When Ryan saw the file, he said that there was absolutely no way Michael's brain tumor wasn't terminal. Ryan's a neurosurgeon. I'm not. But I am a good pediatrician. I know perfectly well there are no medical facts that justify Michael's recovery. Sister Catherine spent her life taking care of disabled children. She opened 7 hospitals for them. I'm proud of myself that I was there for Sally and that I helped Carlos to beat the leukemia. I took an oath that I was testifying about the case to the best of my ability and knowledge. Am I being stubbornly blind? I need to see Michael. It's been 3 years. I want to see him again.
Monica tried to focus on the Mass, but her thoughts kept drifting. The O'Keefes had moved from Mamaroneck from their Manhattan apartment shortly after Michael was diagnosed with brain cancer. It was only when Michael seemed to be fully recovered that they had triumphantly brought him back to her office. "Go in peace, the Mass is ended," the Archbishop pronounced. As Monica left the cathedral, the choir was singing, "Joyful, joyful, we adore thee." She fumbled for her cell phone and dialed information. The O'Keefe's phone number was listed. She dialed it, and the call was picked up on the first ring. "This is Dr. Monica Farrell," she said. "Is this Mrs. O'Keefe?" "Yes, it is," a warm voice responded. "It's nice to hear from you, Doctor." "Thank you, Mrs. O'Keefe. I'm calling because I am very anxious to see Michael again. Would you mind if I came up to visit you? I promise I won't stay long." "That's absolutely fine. We're home all day. Do you want to come this afternoon?" "I'd very much like to come this afternoon." "Has it anything to do with Sister Catherine's beatification?" "It has everything to do with it," Monica said quietly. "Then come right up. Will you be driving yourself?" "Yes." "We look forward to seeing you, Dr. Monica. Isn't it funny that a neurosurgeon, Dr. Ryan Jenner, was here only yesterday afternoon? He also wanted to meet Michael before he speaks to the Beatification Committee. What a wonderful person he is. I'm sure you must know him?" Monica felt a stab of pain. "Yes, I do," she said quietly. "I know him quite well." 2 hours later, Monica was in Mamaroneck, having a sandwich and coffee with Richard and Emily O'Keefe. Michael, their energetic 8-year-old son, had politely visited with Monica and had answered her questions with only a tinge of restlessness. He told her that his favorite sport was baseball, but that in winter he liked to go skiing with his father. He never, ever felt dizzy the way he used to when he was real sick. "His last MRI was only 3 months ago," Emily told Monica. "It was absolutely clear. They've all been perfect after that first year." She smiled at her son, who was now fidgeting. "I know you want to go to Kyle's. It's okay, but Dad will walk you over there, and he'll pick you up later." Michael broke into a grin, revealing 2 missing front teeth. "Thanks, Mom. It's nice to see you again, Dr. Farrell," he said. "Mom told me that you really helped me to get better." He turned and scampered out of the dining room. Richard O'Keefe got to his feet. "Wait up, Mike," he called. After they were gone, Monica protested. "Mrs. O'Keefe, I didn't help Michael get better." "You certainly did. You recognized what it was. You told us straight out to get other consultations, but that he was terminal. That was when I knew I needed to beg for a miracle." "Why did you choose to pray to Sister Catherine in particular?" "My great-aunt was a nurse in one of her hospitals. I remember her telling me when I was a little girl that she had worked with a nun who was like an angel. She told me that you would think every child she held in her arms was her own. She would comfort them and pray over them. My great-aunt was convinced that Sister Catherine had been gifted from God with a special power of healing, that she had an aura about her that words couldn't describe, and that everyone who was in her presence felt it too. When you told us that Michael was going to die, my first thought was of Sister Catherine." "I remember," Monica said quietly. "I felt such pity for you because I knew there was just no hope for Michael." Emily O'Keefe smiled. "And you still don't believe in miracles, do you, Monica? In fact, didn't you come here believing that no matter how well he seems, and no matter how clean his tests, that the tumor could come back someday?" "Yes, I did," Monica said reluctantly. "Why can't you believe in miracles, Monica? What makes you so certain that they don't happen?" "It's not that I don't want to believe, but as I testified to the Beatification Committee, I know from my medical training that throughout history, events have occurred that seem to be miracles, but in reality they have a scientific explanation that just wasn't understood at the time."
Have any one of those events ever included a little boy whose massive and malignant brain tumor completely disappeared? Not that I'm aware of. Monica, Dr. Jenner is one of several respected neurosurgeons who are testifying that there is no medical or scientific explanation for Michael's recovery. I don't know whether you realize it, but it will be a long time before the church itself concludes that this was a miracle. They will follow Michael's medical status for many years. Then Emily O'Keefe smiled. We had pretty much the same conversation yesterday with Dr. Jenner. He told us he believed that in 20 years or 50 years, there will still be no scientific explanation for Michael's cure. She reached for Monica's hand and held it gently. Monica, I hope that you don't think I'm overreaching, but I do very much sense that you are conflicted, and also that you are ready to accept the possibility that Sister Catherine intervened, and that because of her, our only child is with us now.
Esther Chambers devoured the newspapers over the weekend with a combination of shock and disbelief. The fact that Peter Gannon had been arrested for the murder of his former girlfriend seemed to her absolutely incredible.
Greg is the one who has the nasty temper, she thought. I'd believe it of him, but never of Peter.
And the fact that Peter was the father of a baby girl who was in the hospital, a baby Peter had never seen, sickened her.
Poor little tyke, she thought.
Her mother's dead, her father's in jail, and if these articles can be believed, none of her mother's relatives are looking to claim her. Greg's public relations firm had issued the statement to the press saying that the family was standing behind Peter and believed he would be vindicated.
I hope so too, Esther thought. Peter spends the foundation money like water, but he's basically a decent human being. In my wildest dreams, I cannot imagine him strangling that woman and stuffing her into a garbage bag.
She deliberately went to work early on Monday to avoid having to face the other employees and hear the gossip that she knew would be sweeping the office. But when she settled at her desk, Esther realized that her hands were trembling. She knew that by now Arthur Saling must have read the warning she had mailed to him. Would Greg suspect her of having written it? If Saling decided not to invest, she was sure Greg's whole house of cards would collapse within weeks.
Did I have the right to do that? She asked herself. The people from the Securities and Exchange Commission would probably be furious if they found out. But Greg was drawing in Mr. Saling, and I felt so sorry for him and his family. If Saling does invest, his money will be wiped out when the SEC closes in on Greg. Bad enough for the dozens of people who are going to lose everything. I just couldn't let one more person get hurt, not when I could prevent it, she told herself.
Through the glass doors that opened into the area where the rest of the office staff worked, she saw Greg Gannon approaching.
Help me, Lord, she prayed. I don't know what he would do if Saling shows him that letter and he thinks I wrote it.
With a hard push that sent the door flying open, Greg came into the suite and walked straight to Esther's desk. "I assume you've read the newspapers and seen the television stories," he said abruptly.
"Of course. I'm so very sorry, and I know it's all a terrible mistake."
Esther was glad that she was able to keep her voice quiet and convincing. "There'll be plenty of phone calls from the media. Refer them to Jason at the PR firm. Let him earn his money for a change."
"Yes, sir. I'll take care of it immediately."
"I'm not available for calls. I don't care if it's the Pope on the line."
He surely wouldn't be calling you, Esther thought.
Greg Gannon started toward his private office, then stopped. "But if Arthur Saling phones, put him right through. I expect to be meeting with him later today."
Esther swallowed hard. "Of course, Mr. Gannon."
"All right." Greg took a few steps away from Esther's desk, then stopped again. "Wait a minute," he snapped. "Haven't we got a foundation meeting with the Greenwich Hospital Group scheduled for tomorrow morning?"
Yes, at 11 o'clock.
Cancel it.
Mr. Gannon, if you'd allow me to offer a suggestion, that's not a good idea. They're very upset that the grant the foundation promised them hasn't come through. I think it's really necessary for you to meet with them and give them some reassurance. Otherwise, if they get the press involved, it could be ugly. You don't need more pressure right now.
Greg Gannon hesitated, then said,
You're right as usual, Esther. Remind Hadley and Langdon to be here. It's obvious my brother won't be available.
Will you tell Mrs. Gannon yourself, or shall I remind her, sir?
Astonished, Esther watched Greg Gannon's face darken with rage.
Mrs. Gannon is very busy these days, he snapped. I doubt she'll be available.
Oh, boy, Esther thought, as she watched Greg stride into his office. Maybe there's something to that rumor that Pamela has a boyfriend, and now Greg has heard about it. I wonder who the guy is.
If it really is true, Pamela won't be making any more trips to Cartier. She'll be doing her jewelry shopping in a bargain store basement.
After he had lunch with Doug Langdon at the St. Regis, Dr. Clayton Hadley spent the rest of the weekend in a state of near panic. The memory of holding the pillow over Olivia Morrow's face haunted his every waking moment.
How did I let myself get into this? He wondered frantically. I had a good practice. I was being paid well for my job at the foundation. I actually did steer money from the foundation into cardiac research. That at least would stand up if anyone ever investigates where the foundation money really has gone. When the money from Alex Gannon's patents was still flowing in, it was easy for me to set up phony research centers that were little more than rented rooms with a so-called lab technician, Clay thought. Doug got me started on that. Now I have a fortune in my Swiss bank account. A lot of good that will do me if I'm indicted for murder. How about Doug? For the last 10 years, since we've been on the foundation board, he's been funneling small grants into worthwhile mental health projects, as well as pots of money into storefront clinics with one part-time attendant. The money flowed out the back door of those places and straight into Doug's pockets. The Gannons were oblivious, Clay thought. They gave the okay to anything Doug or I proposed. They were too busy scooping out the foundation money themselves to maintain their own extravagances. They rubber-stamped us, and we rubber-stamped them. Then, when Doug introduced Pamela to Greg 8 years ago, Greg fell for her like a ton of bricks, divorced his wife, married her, and made her a member of the foundation board. For 8 years, Pamela's been playing Lady Bountiful all over Manhattan. If Greg wasn't available to take the bows at any of those dreary dinners honoring the foundation for its legitimate grants, she was there doing it for him. Greg's spending has been out of control ever since he married Pamela, Clay thought nervously. And these past 4 years, Peter's been boasting about his grants for his off-Broadway projects, while he's been pouring foundation money into his own musical fiascos. All these thoughts were torturing Clay as he sat trying to read the papers in his comfortable Gramercy Park apartment. Like Doug, he had been divorced for years, but as a welcome guest in the social world, he never lacked for female company. His solicitous manner, as well as his ability to make small talk, made him an excellent extra man, the kind hostesses were always trying to find. Unlike Doug, who escorted any number of different and very attractive women, Clay found his current status absolutely satisfactory. It's taken me more than 50 years to realize that I'm a loner, he thought. Olivia Morrow. I actually have the nerve to miss her. Olivia and I were friends. She trusted me. How many times over the years did we go out for dinner or to the theater together? I knew her for such a long time. Her mother, Regina, was my patient. I'm sorry that her mother told us about Alex's granddaughter and gave Olivia that file. If only Olivia had buried it with her mother. If only. But what good does that do? But did Olivia destroy it in the end? I'm almost sure she did. It wasn't anywhere in the apartment, and her safety deposit box hasn't been opened for years. If she hadn't received that call from Monica Farrell Tuesday night, she'd have died and it would all be over. But instead, Olivia saw that phone call from Catherine's granddaughter as a sign from Catherine, of all things. Now, with Peter all over the newspapers, will it put the foundation in the spotlight? If they ever start digging into the finances, it's all over. Doug seems to think that Greg can doctor up the paperwork to show that because of the present economic climate and some unwise investments, it's necessary to close the foundation. Doug doesn't believe that too many questions will be asked, but I'm not so sure it would be like that at all. I think I'm going to self-diagnose a heart condition, close down my practice, and get out of the country. That decision made, Clayton Hadley felt somewhat better. At 7 o'clock, he sent down for dinner from the in-house restaurant in his upscale condominium. As usual, he ate heartily, then managed to abolish Olivia Morrow's face from his consciousness and fall into a deep sleep. On Monday morning, he arrived at his office at 9:30 as usual. His secretary reported that a Ms. Sophie Rutkowski had phoned and would call back in 15 minutes. Sophie Rutkowski, Clay thought. Who's she? Oh, I know who she is. Olivia's cleaning woman. Olivia left her $5,000 in her will. She probably knows about it and is waiting to get her hands on it. But when Sophie phoned back, it was not about the money. Dr. Hadley, she began, her voice respectful. Did you take the pillowcase with the blood on it from Miss Morrow's apartment? You see, if you did, I'd like to get it from you and wash it so that the complete set is in the linen closet just the way Miss Morrow would like it to be. Would that be all right with you, Doctor? The offices of the prestigious corporate law firm where Susan Gannon worked were on the 10th floor of the former Pan Am building on Park Avenue. On the 12th floor was the equally prestigious criminal defense firm that Harvey Roth headed. Casual friends, they sometimes joked that they still thought of the building by its original name rather than by its present one, the MetLife building. Before she hired Roth to defend Peter, Susan had carefully researched who would be the best possible lawyer for the job. 4 of the 5 attorneys whose opinions she had sought recommended Harvey Roth. The other one had suggested himself. On Monday at noon, Susan and Harvey met in his office. After ordering sandwiches from a local delicatessen, they went into his conference room and sat down at the table. Harvey, how did Peter appear to you when you saw him Saturday? Susan began. Numb, in shock, bewildered. I could go on, but you get the picture, Harvey answered. He claims he absolutely didn't know there was a false bottom in his desk drawer. I called his brother's secretary to ask her about it an hour ago. Esther Chambers, what did she say? She never knew about it either. She had nothing to do with the decorating except to okay the bills. She said that the prices were, and now I'm quoting, ludicrously expensive. Did she give you the name of the decorator? Chambers didn't have it at her fingertips, but she said she knows that the woman has retired and spends most of her time in France. She's going to follow up and get in touch with her. She told me she'd do anything to help Peter. I believe that, Susan said. Harvey, tell me the truth. If Peter's trial were starting now, what would happen? Susan, you know as well as I do that he'd be found guilty, but the trial isn't starting now. Let's take a look at whatever positive facts we can find. Peter was out in the street with Renee Carter. He says he left her and the bag of money. But even if he didn't leave her, what happened next? That bag must have been fairly heavy. He certainly didn't carry it and drag Renee Carter down York Avenue at the same time. Even if the street wasn't crowded, he would almost certainly have been noticed. Susan nodded. If I were the cops, I'd want to see if there's a record of Peter getting into a cab. I'm sure that the cops are doing that, Harvey agreed. Of course, there are plenty of those unlicensed limo drivers cruising around.
He might have hailed one of them, with or without her, or Renee might have gotten into one of them alone. There's another possibility that we're looking into. The restaurant where Peter met Renee had at least 8 or 10 people hanging out at the bar. Last night we got the names of the regulars and were following up on them. If anyone suspected that there was money in that bag, he might have followed Renee out. Maybe some guy had a car parked nearby and offered her a ride. Peter's car is clean, by the way. They have no physical evidence that Renee was ever in it, dead or alive.
Harvey Roth looked across the conference table at the slender woman whose hazel eyes suddenly blazed with hope.
"Susan," he said hurriedly, "don't forget, someone may surface who remembers seeing Renee walking east and Peter following her."
"Why would she walk east?" Susan demanded. "She lived on the west side. She certainly wasn't going to stroll along the river alone carrying a bag full of money at that hour of the night."
Harvey Roth shrugged. "Susan, we're looking for answers," he said flatly. "We won't leave a stone unturned. As I told Peter when I saw him Saturday, our investigators will visit every bar in that area to see if he staggered into one of them, hopefully alone. Let's keep our fingers crossed that he did. Now I've got to get back to work."
He stood up and tucked the plastic plate that had held his sandwich into the paper bag that had contained it.
"Gourmet dining," he said with a quick smile.
Susan put her sandwich, with only a few bites nibbled from it, into the paper bag in front of her. She dropped it and her empty coffee container into the wastebasket, then picked up her purse and a Barnes & Noble bookstore shopping bag. Answering Harvey's unspoken question, she smiled wryly.
"I'm going to the hospital to see Peter's baby," she said.
"I'm not good at this sort of thing, but in the children's section, the clerk assured me that the books she helped me select were perfect for a 19-month-old. I'll let you know if she was right." When Ryan returned from visiting the O'Keefes on Saturday afternoon, he entered the apartment, half afraid that Alice would have found some reason to stay over. But she was gone. A note from her on the coffee table in the living room urged him to give himself enough time to find the right place to rent or buy, that there was no reason for him to rush out and do it just because they'd be sharing this apartment for a little while longer. Alice ended the note by writing, "I'll miss you. It's been fun." She signed it, "Love, A." With an exasperated sigh, Ryan glanced around the room. During the week, Alice had moved some of the furniture so that the 2 club chairs were now facing each other on either side of the couch. She had tied back the heavy draperies with knotted cords that picked up one of the colors in the fabric, giving the room a much brighter appearance. The bookshelves around the fireplace had been rearranged so that the books were in neat rows rather than stacked haphazardly. The room felt as if it had Alice's imprint on it, and it made him uncomfortable. Then he went into his room and found to his dismay that there were new reading lamps on the night tables and a handsome comforter in a brown and beige pattern with coordinating pillows covering the bed. There was a note on the top of the dresser. "How did you ever manage to read with those lamps? My grandmother had one of those heavy old quilts. I took the liberty of packing them all away where I hope they'll never be found." The note was unsigned, but a caricature of Alice was drawn on it. So she's an artist too, Ryan thought. Get me out of here. After the long morning, which he spent apartment hunting, and then the trip to Mamaroneck, he did not feel like going out again. "I'll settle for cheese and whatever else I find," he decided. He went into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. A casserole of lasagna had instructions taped on it. "Heat at 350 degrees for about 40 minutes. Next to it, a smaller dish contained an endive salad. The note indicated there was a freshly made garlic dressing that went with it. I wonder if Alice comes on with such a heavy hand to other guys she's met, Ryan thought. Someone should warn her to tone it down a bit. But I'm not looking a gift horse in the mouth, he thought. I'm hungry, and Alice is a good cook. He followed the instructions on heating the lasagna. Then, when it was ready, he collected some newspapers and read them as he ate. In the car on the way from Mamaroneck,
He had heard on the radio that the first frost of the season would occur during the night. When he carried his second cup of coffee into the living room, he could tell by the chill in the high-ceilinged room that the temperature was dropping outside. One of the few modern touches in the old apartment was a gas fireplace. Ryan pressed the switch and watched as the flames leaped up behind the glass shield. His thoughts turned to his visit with the O'Keefes. Monica did everything right, he decided. According to Emily O'Keefe, she diagnosed Michael immediately and didn't give them any false hope. I can't explain those MRIs. No one can. His first tests show how advanced the cancer was. Michael was so frightened by the MRIs that the O'Keefes decided to not have any more tests since he was terminal. At least Michael's father decided that. His mother says that he didn't need MRIs because he was in the care of Sister Catherine. A year later, when they took Michael to Monica to show her how well he was doing, Monica was astonished at how good he had looked. They allowed her to order another MRI, and the tumor was gone. Michael's brain was normal. Monica was as shocked as I would have been. Michael's father was disbelieving at first, then absolutely overjoyed. Michael's mother offered a prayer of thanks to Sister Catherine. I told the O'Keefes that I was going to ask to be allowed to testify at the beatification hearing, and I told them that I don't care how many years from now they keep testing Michael. He will die of old age before he dies of that cancerous brain tumor. It's gone. I'll make that call Monday. That resolved, Ryan opened his computer. The available apartments he had seen so far were nothing like what he had in mind. But there are plenty more to see, he thought philosophically. The problem is that I want to find something that's available immediately. On Sunday morning, he began to visit the ones he considered the most likely possibilities. At 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, just after he'd decided to give it up until next weekend, he found exactly what he wanted. A spacious, tastefully decorated, 4-room condominium in Soho overlooking the Hudson River. The owner, a photographer who would be overseas on an assignment, was offering a 6-month lease. No animals, no kids, he told Ryan. Amused by the order of descending importance, Ryan had said, I have neither, but someday hope to have both. However, that won't happen in the next 6 months, I guarantee you. Satisfied that he would soon be in his own space, he slept well on Sunday night and was at the hospital at 7 o'clock on Monday morning. His schedule in the operating room was turned upside down by an emergency case. A young jogger hit by a car whose driver didn't see him because he was texting. It was 6:15 before he found time to call Monica's office. Oh, you don't have to worry about returning the O'Keefe file, Nan reassured him. Dr. Farrell had me run over and pick it up from your office. Why did she do that? Ryan asked, astonished. I certainly intended to bring it back myself. May I please speak with her? By the uncomfortable pause, he knew that Monica's secretary had been told to say she was unavailable to him. I'm afraid she's already gone, Doctor, Nan said. In the background, Ryan could clearly hear Monica saying goodbye to a patient. Then tell Dr. Farrell from me to keep her voice down when she's asking you to lie for her, he said sharply, and with a decisive click, hung up the phone. On Monday morning, Monica made an exceptionally early visit to the hospital because she knew her office schedule was packed. When she arrived, Nan and Alma were already there, gearing up for a busy day. Nan's first question was about Sally. She's really good, Monica answered gratefully. Almost too good, in fact. I won't have much justification for keeping her in the hospital longer than a few more days. No relatives showed up over the weekend? Alma asked. No, from what I read in the newspapers, even if Peter Gannon gets out on bail, he's forbidden to go near her. No one seems to know anything about Renee Carter's background, although, putting it bluntly, if her relatives are anything like her, Sally is better off never meeting them. At 10 o'clock, as she was about to go on to the next patient, Nan called her on the intercom. Doctor, would you please step into your consulting room? It had to be important. Nan would never have interrupted her for a casual visitor. Alarmed, Monica darted down the corridor to her private office. 2 men were standing there waiting for her.
We can see how busy you are, Doctor, so we'll make this brief, the taller man said, reaching behind her to shut the office door. I'm Detective Carl Forrest. This is my partner, Detective Jim Whelan. We have come to the definite conclusion that last Thursday evening you were deliberately pushed in front of that bus. Security tapes at the hospital show a man whom we know to be mob-connected followed you when you left the hospital. We're certain he was the one who pushed you.
Who is he? Monica asked, bewildered. And why on earth would he want to kill me?
His name is Sammy Barber. Do you know him, Doctor?
No, I don't.
I'm not surprised, Forrest said. He's a hit man for hire. Do you have any idea why someone would want to hurt or kill you? Think about it. Have you had any problems about a misdiagnosis, say where you lost a child?
Absolutely not.
Dr. Farrell, do you owe anyone money, or does anyone owe you money?
No, no one.
How about a rejected boyfriend? Is there anyone like that in your life?
Forrest caught the hesitation in Monica's face.
There is someone, Dr. Farrell, isn't there?
But it was in the past, Monica protested.
Who is he?
I can tell you you're going nowhere asking about him, and I certainly don't want to put his new job in jeopardy by giving any impression that he's a stalker.
Dr. Farrell, why would you suggest that this person is a stalker?
Forrest asked sharply. Calm down. Get your bearings, Monica told herself. The man I'm talking about was married to a close friend. He was also my father's attorney. He developed a crush on me just before I left Boston. I hadn't seen him in 4 years. He is now divorced and recently moved to Manhattan. He is very interested in trying to help me trace my father's background. My father was adopted. I consider him a friend, nothing more, nothing less.
What is his name?
Scott Alterman.
When was the last time you saw him?
Last Thursday evening. He heard on the radio about the bus almost hitting me and called. I guess he could tell by my voice that I was pretty shaken up. He came to my apartment and stayed for about an hour.
He came immediately after the accident?
Yes, but you must get something straight. In 100 million years, Scott Alterman would never harm me. I'm sure of that.
Have you spoken to him since Thursday?
No, I have not.
Where does he live?
In Manhattan on the west side. I don't have his address.
We'll find it. Do you know where he works?
As I told you, Scott is an attorney. He just started at a New York law firm. It's one of those with 3 or 4 names. One of them is Armstrong. Look, I really have to get back to my patients, Monica said, her voice tinged with exasperation. But what about this Sammy Barber? Where is he?
He lives on the Lower East Side. We've already confronted him about being on the security tape. He denies having anything to do with you, but we are keeping a 24-hour tail on him.
Forrest reached in his pocket and took out the mugshot of Barber.
Here is his picture, so you know what he looks like. He knows we're watching him, so I don't think he'll try again. But, Doctor, please be careful.
I will. Thank you. Monica turned and hurried back down to the examining room, where a 6-month-old was now screaming. When they started talking about Scott, I never even thought to mention that the watering can had been moved the other night, she thought. But before I tell anybody, I'm going to ask Lucy if she'd pushed it aside when she swept the patio. Scott would never, ever want to harm me, she thought. Then the uncomfortable memory of how he had suddenly appeared on the street when she was hailing a cab to go to Ryan's apartment came back to her. Is it possible, she asked herself, is it even remotely possible that Scott is still obsessed with me and would hire someone to kill me? At 2:00 on Monday afternoon, Arthur Sailing phoned Greg Gannon and 20 minutes later arrived at Gannon's office. Esther tried to keep from looking at the sheet of paper he was holding in his hand. She knew it was the letter she had sent him.
Mr. Sailing, it's so nice to see you, she began. I'll tell Mr. Gannon that you are here.
It was not necessary to announce him. The door of Greg's office had opened, and Greg was hurrying to meet Sailing with a welcoming smile and extended hand.
Arthur, I can't tell you how sorry I am that you got one of those poison pen letters a former employee is sending out. Thank you so much for bringing it to me. A number of our clients have received them. They're being turned over to the FBI. The man who has been sending them is demented. They're about to arrest him. I don't want any part of having to testify at a trial, Arthur Sailing said anxiously. Absolutely not, Greg agreed as he put a friendly arm around Sailing's shoulders. We've got plenty of evidence, and this nutcase will be forced to plead guilty. He's married and has a family. What the FBI agent told me is that he'll probably end up getting probation and being ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment. That will be easier for both the poor guy and his family. How kind of you, Arthur Sailing said. I'm not so sure I'd be that benevolent if somebody was trying to ruin my good name.
With a sigh that was partly relief, partly compassion for Arthur Sailing, Esther watched the men disappear into Greg Gannon's private office. As the door closed behind them, she was sure that Sailing was about to put Greg in control of his portfolio.
I did my best to warn him, she thought. There are none so blind as those who will not see.
Her nerves frayed. Esther realized that she could barely wait until the month was up and she could retire.
Of course, it's possible that the SEC will swoop down on Greg even before then, she thought. I don't want to be around for that. What would everybody think of Greg being led out of here in handcuffs? God spare me that scene, she thought.
Esther got down to the task she had been undertaking, the effort to track down Diana Blauvelt, the decorator who had designed these offices 4 years ago. It was nearly an hour later when she finally managed to find her phone number in Paris and make the call. There was no answer, only a request in both English and French to leave a message. Carefully choosing her words, Esther requested Diana Blauvelt to try to remember if she had ever told Peter Gannon that there was a false bottom in the desk she had ordered for his office, and to please return her call as soon as possible. Esther had barely replaced the receiver on the cradle when Greg Gannon and Arthur Sailing came out of Greg's office. Both men were smiling broadly.
Esther, please welcome our new and very important client to the firm, Greg said, his voice genial.
Esther forced a smile as she looked up into the face of Arthur Sailing.
You poor devil, she thought,
as she stood and shook the hand he offered her. At that moment, the phone on her desk rang. Esther picked it up.
Is my husband there? He's not answering his cell phone.
Pamela Gannon's voice was tight and high-pitched.
Yes, he is,
Esther replied and looked at Greg.
It's Mrs. Gannon, sir.
Greg was standing behind Arthur Sailing. His voice still friendly, but his expression turning explosively angry, he said,
Ask my wife to hold. I'll be right with her. Never keep the ladies waiting, Arthur Sailing joked, as Greg walked with him to the elevators.
Mrs. Gannon, he'll be right with you,
Esther began, but was interrupted.
I don't give a damn whether he's with me or not. Where is my jewelry? There's absolutely nothing in the safe in the apartment. What is he trying to pull?
Think, Esther warned herself.
Is it possible that he pledged the jewelry to post bail for Peter? She asked.
The jewelry is mine. He has plenty of other assets.
By now, Pamela Gannon was shrieking.
Mrs. Gannon, please, it's not for me to say.
Esther realized that she sounded as though she were pleading.
Of course it isn't for you to say, Esther, Pamela Gannon snapped. Put him on.
He'll be right with you.
Greg Gannon came hurrying back into the office. He grabbed the phone out of Esther's hand.
I took the jewelry,
he said, his voice cold and furious.
You've seen the last of it unless you can give me a satisfactory explanation of why you were with some guy in Southampton on Saturday afternoon. But there is no explanation, is there, Pam?
Just for the record, I'm not as stupid as you think I am."
He slammed down the phone and stared at Esther.
"You know I trust my hunches," he said. "You sent that letter. I want you out of here. But as a final gesture of loyalty, tell me the truth, Esther. Is the SEC coming after me?"
Esther stood up.
"I wonder why it would ever occur to you to ask that question, Mr. Gannon. I'm delighted to be out of here. But may I offer one final comment?"
She looked him in the eye.
"It's too damn bad that neither you nor your brother ever came close to being the kind of upstanding, splendid men your father and uncle were. They'd be ashamed of both of you. Thanks for the last 35 years. I have to say, they haven't been dull."
At 5:30 on Monday evening, Peter Gannon was taken from the Tombs, an electronic bracelet clasped around his wrist, and released on the bail that Susan had guaranteed. With Harvey Roth at his side, the terms of his temporary freedom had been spelled out. He was not to leave Manhattan without the permission of the judge, and he was not to visit his daughter in the hospital. At last, he and Roth were outside. Peter inhaled deeply the crisp, late October air.
"I have a car," Roth told him. "I'll drop you off at home if that's what you want. I would suggest you get some rest. I'm sure the last 2 nights in the Tombs have not been conducive to sleep." "I'll take up that offer," Peter said quietly. "I have a feeling it's the best one I'll get for a while."
Roth's driver pulled up to the curb, and the 2 men got in the car. Peter waited until they were on the West Side Highway before he said,
"I'm not sure if you're the right lawyer for me. I need to have someone who believes that I am not a murderer, and I get the feeling that you think I am. I want a lawyer who does more than look for legal loopholes. I want somebody who is going to fight hard to prove my innocence."
"I prefer not to consider myself an attorney who deals in legal loopholes," Harvey Roth said mildly.
"You know what I mean. I've started to be able to think a little more clearly. What have you found out about the clothes I was wearing when I met Renee? Are there any bloodstains on them? Or is there any of her DNA on them?"
"The detective heading the case told me there are no apparent bloodstains, but the DNA evidence will take time to evaluate. On the other hand, you claim you were afraid of becoming nauseous when you left her. I understand there is absolutely no hint on your clothes that you became ill that night."
Peter smiled grimly.
"What you're saying is that I'm a tidy drunk. Let's consider this. The bar where I met her was in the 80s on York Avenue. My office is nearly 2 miles away. Maybe I went directly there and passed out. Is that so improbable?"
"Mr. Gannon, it is very unfortunate that your office building does not have security cameras to back up that scenario," Roth said. "Apparently they have been out of commission for quite a while."
"The building that my present office is in is a dump," Peter agreed.
"Nevertheless," Roth said, "to get into it, a key to the outer door is required, as well as a key to your own office. Are you suggesting that you went directly there and that someone came in while you were passed out and hid that money in your desk? Isn't that what you were telling me? Isn't that a little far-fetched?"
"Mr. Roth, the couch where I was asleep is in the reception area of the suite. My office is in the next room. There's a separate entrance for it in case I want to go in without having to walk through the waiting room."
"Peter, we might as well get on a first-name basis. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. Let's not waste any of it grasping at straws. Who else would have keys to your office building, your suite, and your private office?"
"As Susan can verify, I'm not very organized. I'm one of those people who is always losing keys."
"Peter, a lot of people are careless with keys, but most of them aren't carrying a shopping bag containing $100,000 and leaving it in your office, to say nothing of putting the money in a hidden panel in your desk."
Then, even in the semi-darkness, Roth could see the expression on Peter's face suddenly change.
"Peter," he asked sharply, "can you think of anyone who had access to spare keys and who might also have known about that $100,000?
Peter did not answer. He looked out the window of the sedan as it moved slowly forward in the evening traffic.
"Let me think about that," he answered.
He knew he could not yet bring himself to speak the name of the person who he was almost certain had been the one to put that money in his office.
I'm starting to remember, he thought. That car that was parked across the street when Renee slapped me, it looked familiar. She would have accepted a ride from him. If he suspected that she knew, he might have told her that he'd pay her off to keep her quiet about his insider trading. My brother, Greg.
"Dr. Monica, one more thing," Nan Rhodes said. "Sophie Rutkowski called this morning. She wouldn't say what it was about, but she sounds upset. I promised that you'd call her back when your office hours were over." "I'll do that. You run ahead. It's been a busy day," Monica replied. Nan had just relayed Ryan's message to her. "The next time you lie for Dr. Farrell." She felt stressed out and humiliated, but she wasn't sure she wanted to confide to Nan why she was avoiding Ryan Jenner's calls. Nan wanted to protest, but seeing the expression on Monica's face, decided it would be better to leave her alone. She probably needs some time to herself, Nan thought. In the morning, after the two detectives came to the office, she had immediately called John Hartman to see if he knew why they were there. She had not seen Hartman over the weekend because he'd been in Philadelphia visiting an old friend who was also a retired detective. Hartman told Nan that he had suggested to his former partner, Detective Carl Forrest, that they check the security cameras at the hospital, and that had led to seeing Sammy Barber get out of his car and follow Monica. He had then tried to calm her by saying that they hoped they had scared him off from attacking her again. "John, you're telling me that thanks to you they traced this Barber guy?" "Nan, they probably would have thought of it themselves," Hartman answered. "But be that as it may, you see Dr. Farrell at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and some Saturdays. You're in the position to be on the watch for anyone who might be a danger to her." Hartman then suggested that they have dinner together, "if it isn't one of your nights at Jimmy Neary's with your sisters." It was an invitation that Nan had both been hoping for and expected would come. Now, reluctant as she was to leave Monica, she was also eager to go home and freshen up before John came for her. "Well then, I'll see you in the morning, Dr. Monica," she said. She was about to add, "Be sure to double lock the door behind me," but pressed her lips together. I'm sure she's had enough advice from those detectives, she decided. Alone in the suddenly quiet office, with the phones no longer ringing and no small patients scampering through the reception room, Monica went into her private office, put her elbows on the desk, and rested her chin on her hands. The import of what the detectives had told her, that a hitman had tried to kill her, was beginning to sink in. Scott has to be behind this, she thought. Who else would have any interest in wanting to hurt me? He did call out of the blue only a few minutes after I got home Thursday night. I was so foolish to let him come over to the apartment. Maybe I was lucky that he didn't try to hurt me then. God knows he was obsessed with me after Dad died. He phoned 20 times a day and even followed me around in the street. He's the reason I didn't take the job at the hospital in Boston. I had to get away from him. He obviously needs psychiatric help. But I do know one thing. He's not going to drive me out of New York. I love the hospital. I have a good practice. I have plenty of friends. Inevitably, that thought led to the situation with Ryan Jenner. Why would I be so stupidly unprofessional as to ask Nan to lie for me to Ryan? She asked herself. I'm acting like a spurned girlfriend, when in fact I've never even had a single date with him. I'm sure he understands that I didn't want any gossip about us in the hospital. I'm certain that when he really thinks about it, he doesn't want it either. I have both his home and cell numbers. I'll call tomorrow and apologize. I'll simply say that I was concerned about the gossip, but that I had no right to be rude to him. I'm sure he'll be more gracious than I've been, and that will be that. Monica sighed as she fished into her pocket for the slip of paper Nan had handed her with Sophie Rutkowski's number on it. Nan had said that Sophie sounded nervous and upset. Monica found the paper, laid it on her desk, and began to dial. Do I dare hope that she's remembered something about Olivia Morrow that would help me learn about my grandparents? But I know that's not going to happen. Sophie answered her phone on the first ring. The strain in her voice was obvious to Monica, even when she only uttered the simple word, "Hello?" "Sophie, this is Dr. Farrell. Is anything wrong?"
"Doctor, I feel like a thief. I don't know what to do."
"Sophie, no matter what you tell me, I am certain that you are not a thief," Monica said firmly. "What's going on?"
"I have another job on Saturday afternoons at Schwab House. After I finished it, I decided to go into Miss Morrow's apartment and tidy it up. I have a key, of course. I know people will be going through it who will want to buy it, and people will also be there who may want to buy her furniture and so on. I didn't want them to see an unmade bed or a pillowcase with blood on it."
"Sophie, that was very nice of you," Monica assured her. "If you took that pillowcase to wash, no one would ever believe that you wouldn't return it."
"Doctor, that's not what I'm saying. That pillowcase was missing. This morning I called Dr. Hadley to see if he had taken it."
Monica felt suddenly chilled. "What did Dr. Hadley say?"
"He got very mad. He said I had no right to be nosing around the apartment. He told me to leave my key at the desk, and if I tried to go into Miss Morrow's apartment again, he'd have me arrested for trespassing."
"Did he tell you that he had taken the pillowcase?" Monica asked, her thoughts filled with the image of Olivia Morrow's face in death and the evidence that she had bitten her lower lip.
"No, that's the problem. If he didn't take it, someone else did. And if anything else is missing, they may blame me, Doctor. I'm so worried. I only went in because I wanted everything to be just so in Miss Morrow's home. But you see, I did take something, and I've already turned in the key, and I don't know what to do now."
"What did you take, Sophie?"
"I took a pillow that had blood on it, the one that had been covered with the pink pillowcase. I knew Miss Morrow wouldn't want anyone to see it. Blood always shows on pillow fabric."
"Sophie," Monica asked quickly, "did you throw that pillow out?"
"No, I brought it home, Doctor."
"Sophie, this is very important. Put that pillow in a plastic bag and hide it. Don't tell anyone, especially Dr. Hadley, that you have it. No, better still, give me your address. I'm going to take a cab up to your apartment right now and pick it up."
"Doctor, why would you want a soiled pillow?"
Sophie protested. "Sophie, I honestly can't answer that right now. It's just something I have to work out myself. But please, trust me."
"Of course, Doctor. Have you got a pen? I'll give you my address."
An hour and a half later, all thoughts of dinner forgotten, Monica was holding the stained pillow with gloved hands over two pillows piled on her own bed, in the same position as she remembered the ones that had been under Olivia Morrow's head. "Am I going crazy?" she asked herself. "Or is it possible that there is only one way that stain could have gotten on that spot? But why would anyone want to hold a pillow over her face and suffocate a dying woman?" Monica slipped the pillow back into the loose plastic bag. "I'll talk to Nan's friend, John Hartman," she decided. "He's the one who would know what to do." Is it possible that someone in the building got into Olivia Morrow's apartment, maybe to burglarize it, and she woke up? It was pretty generally known that she was dying. But then again, why would Dr. Hadley get so upset with Sophie? Of all people, he should be the one to want to follow up if there's any suggestion of foul play. "I'll bring the pillow to the office tomorrow and ask Nan if Hartman will come over after office hours and talk to me," she decided. The decision made, Monica decided not to put off calling Ryan any longer. She dialed his home number and heard his voice. "Sorry to miss your call. Leave a number and I'll get back to you." I'm not apologizing to an answering machine, she thought. He's probably out to dinner with his girlfriend, so I won't bother him on his cell phone. Oh well. She went into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and was disappointed to find that because she had not gotten around to shopping over the weekend, the most she could find was the makings of an omelet. Then she had a frightening thought. The overhead light in the kitchen was on, which meant that anyone lurking in the back could see her through the panes of glass on the top section of the outside door. I have to get a dark shade for it, she thought, but in the meantime I'll tack something over it. Feeling under siege, she went into the living room and picked up the Afghan from the couch. As she carried it back to the kitchen, she remembered how tenderly Scott Alterman had tucked it around her after he had rushed to be with her and found her trembling and chilled by her brush with death. On Tuesday morning, Tony Garcia, filled with anticipation, was in the waiting room of Dr. Clayton Hadley's office. When I called yesterday, he couldn't have been nicer, Tony thought. I explained that I'd like to buy Ms. Morrow's car, and he asked if I realized it was 10 years old. Then I offered to pay him the book value in cash, and he said that would be fine. The doctor will be right with you, sir, the receptionist said, with a friendly smile at the young man in a chauffeur's uniform, who was obviously uneasy sitting with a well-dressed couple who were also waiting to see the doctor. Thanks very much, Tony said. I still can't believe how lucky I am, he thought. Yesterday, when I asked the doctor if I could possibly get the car right away, even before the ownership transfer papers could be completed, I never thought he'd be so nice. I guess it was because I explained that we could have been killed in an accident when our old car stopped short in traffic. But he did say that it's near the end of the month, and there was no use wasting money from the estate paying the garage bill in Ms. Morrow's apartment building. You can go in now, Mr. Garcia, the receptionist told him. The doctor will see you in the second room on the right. Tony jumped up. Oh, thank you, he said, as the receptionist assured the couple in the waiting room that the doctor would be with them in a few minutes. With quick steps, Tony, following instructions, entered the private office of Dr. Clay Hadley. He's pretty fat for a cardiologist, was Tony's first thought, but it passed quickly from his mind. Dr. Hadley, thanks so much. This means so much to me and my family. I can't tell you how scared I was when all of a sudden my car stopped in traffic. But I won't take your time. I brought the money in cash. My brother-in-law lent it to me. He's a prince. After the phone call from Sophie Rutkowski the day before, Clay Hadley had been terrified. I panicked, he thought. I should have told her I was having the pillowcase laundered. Did she notice the bloodstain on the pillow itself? I can't ask her that. It will only bring her attention to it. Take the damn car, he thought impatiently, as, forcing a smile, he watched Tony offer him 6 rubber-banded packs of 10 $100 bills. $6,000 in all, Tony said. Doctor, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your letting me take the car right away. My wife Rosalie's grandmother lives in New Jersey, and she looks forward so much to Rosie visiting her. Without a car, it would be impossible. Clay Hadley raised his hand. Tony, I have your phone number. I'll give you a call when we can complete the paperwork. My secretary has called the garage. They're expecting you to pick up the car this morning. They looked through it, but there was nothing personal in it. The insurance card and registration are in the glove compartment. Of course, once we officially transfer ownership to you and give you the title, you get your own registration and insurance. Here is a receipt for the payment now. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. Tony started for the door, got as far as the receptionist's desk, then hesitated and turned around. I wonder if that bag Ms. Morrow asked me to put under the blanket in the trunk is still there, he thought. I shoved it pretty far back. The garage attendants may have missed it. Maybe I should tell the doctor about it. The receptionist had seen him turn. Mr. Garcia, she said firmly, I'm afraid that I can't keep the doctor's patients waiting any longer. I'm sure he's on his way to the examining room now. Embarrassed, Tony murmured, Of course, I'm sorry. As he made his way through the reception area, he thought, if that file is there, I'll just mail it back to Dr. Hadley. I should have known better than to try to bother him with it now. On Tuesday morning, Detectives Barry Tucker and Dennis Flynn were sitting in the private office of Department Chief Jack Stanton, sipping coffee and reviewing the case with him. It had been 5 days since Renee Carter's body had been found.
"Some of this just doesn't add up," Tucker told the chief. "Gannon had the motive, the opportunity, and a very convenient memory blackout, not to mention the $100,000 hidden in the drawer in his office." "What doesn't add up?" Stanton asked. "We tracked down 3 of the patrons who were in the bar where Carter and Gannon met. 2 of them remembered hearing them arguing, but didn't know what it was about. Both of them noticed Carter leaving the bar with Gannon right behind her. The 3rd guy we spoke to is the one who's most important," Dennis Flynn said. "He claimed that he had left the bar less than a minute later, and that he saw a man he's pretty sure was Gannon walking down York Avenue alone." "Which is consistent with what Gannon claimed," Tucker said. "This guy swears he didn't see Carter and that she was already gone." "How reliable is this witness?" Stanton demanded. "He's an engineer, a one-drink-only regular customer. No connection to anyone involved, no axe to grind. Even though he's not 100% sure it was Gannon that he saw, put him on the witness stand and it's more than enough to give the jury reasonable doubt." Barry Tucker stared into his coffee cup, wishing he had not put so much sugar in it. "If this guy is right, Carter must have gotten into a car," he said. "But what car? Whose car? Peter Gannon's BMW hasn't been out of his garage in a week. We checked the garage records. On top of that, we've gone over the car with a fine-tooth comb. There's no trace of Carter ever having been in it." "She had that heavy shopping bag," Flynn pointed out to his boss. "Odds are if Gannon did walk away from her, she got into a cab or one of those cruising limos. We've checked out all the licensed cabs and none of them picked her up. If she got into one of those gypsy limos, what did the guy who was driving see? A good-looking, well-dressed babe who, according to the babysitter, was wearing some decent jewelry. We both know what might have happened next." "Her jewelry was gone, her purse was gone. Let's suppose our mystery limo driver killed her," Tucker suggested. "How does he end up going to Gannon's office and hiding all that cash? Why would he put that kind of money back? How would he get into the office in the first place? And where does he stash the body for more than 24 hours before he wraps it in a garbage bag and stuffs it under a park bench? None of it makes sense." Stanton leaned back in his chair. "Let's look at this scenario. Somebody was parked near that bar because he knew Gannon was meeting Carter there. After Gannon stumbled off, that person offered Carter a ride. She wasn't dumb. She probably wouldn't have gotten into a car, other than one of those gypsy limos, with someone she didn't know." Tucker nodded. "That's where I've been going. And think about this. Peter Gannon's fingerprints were all over the cash in the shopping bag, but there were no fingerprints in the false bottom of the drawer where the money was hidden. Was he smart enough or drunk enough to put on gloves to hide the money, but dumb enough to dump the shopping bag into the wastepaper basket where anyone could see it?" Tucker's phone rang. He glanced at the ID of the caller. "It's the lab," he said as he answered. "What's up?" "Oh, thanks for the rush job." He snapped the phone closed. "The lab has finished going over the clothing that Gannon was wearing that night and the clothing that Renee Carter was found in. There is no trace of Carter's blood or hair or fibers from her clothes on anything he was wearing, and there's nothing on her clothing that came from him." The chief had been reading the Gannon file before Tucker and Flynn arrived at his office. He turned to a page and reread it. "According to the statement Peter Gannon gave, he had, only a few days earlier, requested a loan of $1 million from the Gannon Family Foundation to pay off Renee Carter. But the most the board members would advance him was $100,000. That means that whoever is on the board knew about Renee and her demands. We know that some of these family foundations are pretty shaky. I would say your next move is to talk to those people and see what you can find." Tucker nodded, stood up, and stretched. "I'm beginning to think I should get a job working for the Gannon defense team," he said, "because that's just about what we may be doing now." As he and Flynn made their way through the cluttered outer office to their desks,
A young detective passed them. "Barry, you looked real good on page 3 of the news," he commented. "My girlfriend says she likes your crooked smile." "So does my wife," Barry retorted. "By the way the case is going, she's not going to get much chance to enjoy it for a while."
Mentally and physically exhausted, Peter Gannon slept soundly Monday night. On Tuesday morning, feeling alert and clear-headed for the first time in days, he showered, shaved, then dressed in khakis and searched in his closet for a long-sleeved sports shirt that he hoped would conceal the electronic bracelet. Feeling quite hungry, he prepared scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee. As he was about to sit down, he opened the door to get the newspapers, which were usually delivered by 7 a.m. They were not there, and he dialed the concierge to have them sent up. The man was apologetic.
"Mr. Gannon, we weren't aware that you were home."
Meaning out of jail, Peter thought.
"We'll send them right up, sir."
I wonder what they'll be writing about me today, Peter asked himself. But when the papers arrived and he opened the post, the entire front page was a picture of a wistful baby girl standing in a crib. Peter Gannon's abandoned love child was the headline. Peter slumped into a chair and for long minutes stared at the picture. The wide, solemn eyes of his daughter seemed to look accusingly at him. He forced himself to read the story, which reviewed in lurid details the finding of Renee's body, his arrest, the fact that Renee had no known relatives, and that already there had been dozens of calls from people begging to adopt little Sally.
"They're not going to get her," Peter said aloud, slamming down the paper. "Nobody is going to get her."
There was only one person he could turn to for help. He dialed Susan's cell phone and reached her at her office.
"Susan, have you seen the picture of the baby on the cover of the Post?"
"I've done more than that," she said quietly. "I've seen the baby. Peter, I'm going into a meeting. I can run over to your apartment in a couple of hours. I've got to talk to you." While he waited, Peter resumed the task that had been occupying him when he was arrested on Saturday morning. He replaced the contents of the drawers that had been spilled in the living room, finished putting the paintings back on the wall, straightened out the closets, and put the furniture back where it belonged. When he and Susan divorced, he had lived with Renee in a suite in the Pierre for 2 years, another wild extravagance. After they split, he had bought this place and left it to a decorator to furnish it. But I didn't go hog wild, he thought. I gave her a budget. At least in some ways I was starting to get practical. And then I produced 2 absolutely disastrous musicals with other people's money. It was almost noon when he was satisfied that the apartment was orderly again. Too restless to sit, he stood at the window and looked down into the busy intersection below. What do I do now? Do I point the finger at Greg? Do I tell the police that he had a motive to kill Renee Carter? If I say that he may have found out that I told Renee that he was involved in insider trading, I not only put the federal prosecutors on his case, but I make him a suspect in her murder. Greg would not kill Renee any more than I would. I can't try to save myself by exposing him. My big brother. The guy who wanted me to succeed in the theater. The guy who said okay whenever I looked to get grants for my theater projects. There has to be another way for me to prove my innocence without destroying Greg. I did walk back to the office that night, Peter thought. I wanted the fresh air. I knew I was drunk. There was a car across the street from the bar. I can now see it clearly in my mind. And I know whose it was. It was Greg's car. And what do I do about that? The house bell rang.
"Mrs. Gannon is here," the doorman announced.
"Send her right up," Peter said as he hurried to open the door. Detectives Carl Forrest and Jim Whelan agreed on one of 3 possibilities. The first scenario was that if Scott Alterman had hired Sammy Barber to kill or injure Dr. Monica Farrell, he had been tipped off by Barber and had fled. The second possibility was that Sammy Barber had gotten one of his fellow goons to get rid of Alterman,
to make sure that if Alterman were ever arrested himself, he could never give up Sammy. A third possibility was that having hired Sammy, and in fear of disgrace and imprisonment, Alterman had committed suicide. On Tuesday morning, Forrest and Whelan went to Scott Alterman's apartment and learned to their chagrin that he had not been seen there since Saturday evening, when, dressed in a business suit and tie, he had walked out of his apartment building. "He was in a really good mood," the doorman told the detectives. "Not a care in the world, if you know what I mean. I asked if he wanted me to call him a cab, but he said he wasn't going far, he could walk it." Their next stop was at his new office in the prestigious law firm of Williams, Armstrong, Fisk, and Conrad. "Mr. Alterman started with us only last week," his secretary said. "On Saturday afternoon, he left a message on my office phone telling me to remind him on Monday that he wanted me to find out anything I could about the background of an Olivia Morrow who died last week." Forrest made a note of the name. "Have you any idea why he wanted you to do that?" "Not really," the secretary replied. "But I think it might have had something to do with a Dr. Monica Farrell. You probably heard. She was the young woman who was almost killed by the bus." "Dr. Monica Farrell." Carl Forrest tried to keep his face impassive and his tone of voice even. "Yes, I know about her. What gives you the idea that Mr. Alterman was connected in some way to this woman Olivia Morrow who died?" "Last week we were talking in the office about the kind of mentally disturbed people who won't take their medicine and then try to kill innocent people like that young doctor. Mr. Alterman said that he knew Dr. Farrell, and of course we asked him more about her." "What did Alterman say?" Forrest asked. "He said that she didn't know she was an heiress to a fortune, but that he was going to prove it." "He said what?" Forrest asked, as Jim Whelan stared at the secretary. "How did you respond to that statement?" "We really didn't. We thought he was joking. Don't forget, we really don't know Mr. Alterman very well. He just started at the firm a week ago." "Of course. Please call me immediately if you hear from him." Forrest and Whelan went down in the elevator together. They were leaving the building when Forrest felt the slight vibration of his cell phone in his breast pocket, indicating that a call was coming through. It was from headquarters. He answered it, listened, then said, "Okay, we'll meet you at the morgue." Then, standing in the inviting sunshine and crisp breeze of the October morning, he told Whelan, "A body has just been fished out of the East River. If the wallet with all the usual identification is accurate, we can stop looking for Scott Alterman." On Tuesday morning at 5 minutes of 11, Monica Farrell, accompanied by 2 members of the board of directors of Greenwich Village Hospital, entered the vast lobby of the Time Warner Center and took the elevator to the floor where the Alexander Gannon Foundation and the Gannon Investment Firm shared connecting offices. Justin Banks, the chairman of the board, and Robert Goodwin, executive director of development, were men in their 60s. Both of them, like Monica, were passionately dedicated to making Greenwich Village Hospital the finest medical center it could possibly become. Over the years, the 100-year-old hospital had evolved from a small 20-bed local clinic to the impressive award-winning facility it now was. As Justin Banks was fond of saying, "At least half the population of Greenwich Village first saw the light of day in our hospital." Now there was a pressing need for a state-of-the-art pediatric center, toward which Greg and Pamela Gannon had pledged $15 million with great fanfare at a black-tie dinner a year and a half ago. When they arrived, a young receptionist invited them to wait in the conference room and offered them coffee. Banks and Goodwin refused, but Monica accepted. "I didn't have my usual second cup this morning," she explained with a smile. "I had some early patients and I was rushing." There was another reason why she had not taken time for a second coffee. Guessing he would be up, she had called Ryan on his cell phone at 7 o'clock. He had assured her he was not only up, but about to leave for the hospital. Then she said, "Ryan, I really need to apologize. I was so terribly rude to you." "You were obviously mad at me," he had said. But I certainly understand that you don't want to become the subject of gossip.
Nor do you. She hadn't intended to say that.
Actually, I wouldn't have minded, but there you are.
And I got mad again, Monica thought, as she thanked the secretary for the coffee. I said that he wasn't being fair to his girlfriend to talk like that.
My girlfriend? He had exclaimed. What are you talking about?
When I phoned you last Thursday evening to explain why I didn't get back to my office to give you the file.
What do you mean you phoned Thursday night?
I phoned your apartment. Your significant other, or whoever she is, said you were there but you were changing. I assumed she would give you the message.
Oh, my God. I might have known. Monica, listen to me.
As Monica heard Ryan's angry but welcome explanation, she had felt as if a weight were lifting off her heart. Ryan was going to meet her at her office tonight. I'll show him the pillow too and see what he thinks of it.
The last words of their conversation puzzled her, but he was laughing when he said them. Okay, Monica, we both have to get moving, and I have one more job to do before I leave this apartment.
I asked him what he meant, Monica thought, and he told me he had to throw out the rest of the lasagna.
He said, I'll explain what I mean when I see you.
She had taken the time to change into a suit because they were going out for dinner.
Monica, Justin Banks said, I'm not much for personal compliments, but you look absolutely lovely this morning. You should always wear blue.
Thanks. This outfit represents my fall shopping to date.
Robert Goodwin was looking at his watch. 10 after 11. Let's hope these people show up soon and have a check for us. They must have some money left. These are pretty fancy offices for a foundation. I happen to know the cost of rents in this building.
They heard footsteps coming toward them. A moment later, 3 men entered the room. Monica was stunned to see that one of them was Dr. Clay Hadley. She could tell that he was equally shocked to see her. She had been at the dinner announcing the grant and had met Greg Gannon there. The other man now being introduced to them was Dr. Douglas Langdon.
Dr. Hadley and Dr. Langdon are our board members, Gannon explained. My wife is not able to be with us today, and I'm sure you're quite aware why my brother is not here. Let's leave it at that.
Gannon then sat at the head of the table, his demeanor solemn and unsmiling.
Let's not waste each other's time, he said. The fact is that the grant we so willingly pledged last year simply cannot be filled at this time. I don't have to tell you how serious the economic climate has been, and like many other foundations, we were among the victims of a major scam, the Ponzi scheme that has been in the newspapers for months. I've followed very carefully the Ponzi scheme I believe you are talking about, Goodwin said sharply. The Gannon Foundation has not been listed as being involved. Nor do we want it to be, Greg Gannon replied, his tone equally sharp. The other arm of our business is my investment firm. I don't intend to have my clients worried that their money was lost because it was not. The Gannon Foundation has given away millions over the years. Our record of generosity is extraordinary, but now it has come to an end. The foundation will be closing. We cannot honor our pledge to you. Mr. Gannon, Justin Banks said, speaking slowly for emphasis, you are a very wealthy man. Would you consider putting some of your own money into the hospital's pediatric wing? I assure you the need for it is great. Greg Gannon sighed. Mr. Banks, if half the people who are reputed to be very wealthy had to list their assets honestly, you would find that the $10 million house has a $9 million mortgage, that the yacht is rented, and the cars are leased. I'm not saying that is necessarily my case, but I will say that I have already undertaken to personally fund some of our ongoing projects. You have not even put a spade in the ground for your pediatric center. On the other hand, several cardiac research centers and mental health facilities need to be funded until they can be merged with other similar units. I will take care of them, but I cannot do more.
The entire time Greg Gannon was speaking, Monica had been studying Clay Hadley's face. It was glistening with perspiration.
There was a nervous tick on the side of his lip that she had not noticed when she met him in Olivia Morrow's apartment. The suspicion that he might have caused Morrow's death was growing into a near certainty. But why? Douglas Langdon. She wondered what kind of doctor he was. Very, very good-looking, smooth. The expression on his face was an obviously feigned regret over the situation. He doesn't give a damn, she thought. This guy is a phony through and through. Where are we going to get the money for the pediatric center now? She asked herself, as Greg Gannon got to his feet, signaling that the meeting was over. Doug, Clay, wait here, he said. His stern tone indicated that it was an order. Both men had started to leave, but they sat down immediately. Monica, Banks, and Goodwin followed Greg Gannon to the reception room. It was then that she saw it. The portrait of Dr. Alexander Gannon. Frozen on the spot, she stared at it. It's Daddy. Just the way he looked before he got sick, she thought incredulously. He could have posed for it. The silver hair, the handsome, distinguished features, the blue eyes were mirror images of the picture she carried in her wallet. Even the expression in Alex Gannon's eyes, wise and kind, was so like the expression she remembered in her father's eyes. That was my uncle, Greg Gannon was saying. As you may know, the orthopedic replacement parts he invented are used internationally. This is the last portrait that was painted of him. We used to keep it in our home in Southampton, but I decided last year that it was more appropriate to hang it here. It's a very fine representation of him. It's magnificent, Monica agreed, her lips stiff. She reached into her pocket and stepped away. Excuse me, she murmured, and pulled out her cell phone as if she had felt it vibrating. As she opened it, she pretended to say a few words into it and took a picture of the portrait. No wonder Scott kept insisting that Dad had a startling resemblance to Alexander Gannon. I can't wait to compare their pictures. It's a great pity that Dr. Gannon's foundation is closing, Justin Banks said. I am sure that he would never have wanted a pledge such as the one you made to Greenwich Village Hospital to be cancelled so abruptly. Goodbye, Mr. Gannon. Please, don't bother to see us out. On Tuesday morning, Esther Chambers, totally unused to lingering over breakfast, glanced at the clock in her dining area and realized it was time to get herself ready. It was 10:15, and Thomas Desmond from the Securities and Exchange Commission was coming to her apartment at 11. She had phoned him yesterday evening, and when he did not answer, too emotionally stressed to go into details, she simply left a message that she had been fired and that she needed to speak to him. Desmond called back an hour later and simply said, If 11 o'clock tomorrow morning works for you, I will be there. Nervous at the prospect of having to tell Desmond that she had tried to warn Arthur Saling about investing his money, and that was the reason Greg had fired her, Esther showered and dressed. She chose to wear a cardigan and slacks, not one of her usual subdued business suits. Today is the first day of the rest of my life, whatever that means, she thought. Desmond was announced from the desk promptly at 11 o'clock. After they exchanged greetings and he refused her offer of coffee, he said, Ms. Chambers, did anything precipitate Gannon's firing you? Does he suspect that he's under investigation? Esther drew a long breath. You're not going to like this, Mr. Desmond, but here's what happened. In precise detail, she explained why she had decided to warn off Arthur Saling. It was like watching a lamb being led to the slaughter, she said. It's no wonder everything had been placed in trust for him. Now the minute he can get his hands on all that family money, he can't wait to invest it with someone like Greg, who promises he can double or triple it. Mr. Saling has 5 grown children and 11 grandchildren. I'm sorry, but to know that once his money is in Greg's hands, it would just be used to pay other investors whose money Greg has lost in that last hedge fund of his was just too much. I understand, Desmond said. I really do.
Then to answer your question, when Greg told me he was sure I was the one who had sent that warning to Arthur Sailing, he also asked me, as a final test of loyalty, if the SEC was investigating him.
What did you tell him? Desmond asked quickly.
My answer was to ask him why he would ever think to ask a question like that.
Desmond nodded approvingly. Good answer, and please don't be upset about trying to warn Arthur Sailing. Who knows? The transfer of his portfolio probably hasn't gone through yet, so he may be lucky. We're arresting Greg Gannon this afternoon. Now that he suspects we're on to him, he'll never communicate with any more inside traders.
You're arresting Greg today?
Esther asked sadly. Yes. Frankly, I should not have told you that, but I wanted you to know that Arthur Sailing's money is probably still safe.
There is no one I would think of telling, Esther said. It's just that it all seems so impossible. Peter Gannon is accused of murdering his former girlfriend. His baby is in a hospital unwanted by anyone. His ex-wife Susan was and is a gem. Greg Gannon had the most wonderful wife and 2 fine sons, and he left them for a gold digger like Pamela. Now, from what went on yesterday afternoon at the office, he's caught on to the fact that she's involved with someone else. Do you think Pamela will stay by his side when he's arrested? Not on your life.
Desmond got up to go. Unfortunately, we see this kind of thing all the time in our business. We'll be in touch with you again, Ms. Chambers. But a friendly word of caution. Don't be too sorry for the Gannons. They're the architects of their own misery, and they have caused a lot of misery to others. It was only after Desmond left that Esther realized Diana Blauvelt, the decorator whom she had left a message for in Paris, might very well have returned her call. She dialed her phone at her desk in the office, hoping that no one else had picked up her voicemail. But if Blauvelt had left the message, it had been erased.
I have to know, Esther thought. Peter's lawyer said it was so important.
She had written Diana Blauvelt's Paris phone number in her daily reminder book.
It's 5:30 in the afternoon in Paris, she thought. I hope I get her in.
A sleepy "Allô?" told her that she had reached Blauvelt.
Oh, for God's sake, Esther thought, don't practice your French on me. Diana, she said apologetically, you sound as though you might have been napping, but it's important that I talk to you. Did you get my message, and do you remember anything about that desk with the false bottom in it?
Oh, it's you, Esther. Don't worry about waking me up. I'm going out to dinner later, and I just thought I'd rest for half an hour. Of course I remember about the desk. As I told Greg Gannon when I called back after you'd left your office yesterday, I bought 2 of those desks.
2 of them? Esther exclaimed.
Yes, one for Peter and one for Dr. Langdon. I never did see Peter to show him the false bottom in the big drawer, but I did show Dr. Langdon. He had his desk sent to his office where he sees his psychiatric patients, not to his office at the foundation.
You're sure of this, Diana?
Absolutely. And I told Greg Gannon that his wife can back me up. Pamela was there when I showed Dr. Langdon the hiding place in the desk.
Stunned, Esther realized the possible ramifications of what she had just heard. Then Diana, after a moment's hesitation, added,
Esther, I understand from Greg that you're retired now.
I've got to ask you, don't you think that Pamela Gannon and Dr. Langdon have been pulling the wool over Greg Gannon's eyes for years? Susan had never been in Peter's apartment. Now she looked around intently as she walked into the living room. Then, with a fleeting smile, she said, I like what you've done here. You always had good taste.
Whatever good taste I have as far as home furnishings go, or anything else for that matter, came from the women in my life, my mother and you.
He took a deep breath and told her what had been weighing on his mind since the moment he saw Sally's picture.
Susan, I know what you think of me as a father, but now I beg you to help me as my attorney. I want my daughter. Granted, I have never seen her,
But when her mother and I broke up, I gave Renee $2 million so that she would be able to have the best possible medical care while she was pregnant, and then never contact me again. I was told that Sally was going to be adopted by responsible people, and at the time it seemed like a good idea. Why did I have the nerve to think that Susan would help me with this situation? Peter asked himself as he tried to justify his neglect of his child. Nevertheless, he persisted. I would have continued to support my daughter. You know my quarrel with Renee wasn't about that. It was about Renee's ability to hurt Greg with what she knew. Susan looked at her ex-husband, her expression calm. What are you trying to say, Peter? I want Sally. I did not kill her mother. I cannot bear the thought of her being placed in a foster home. I have been accused of a crime, but not convicted of it. What right has anyone to say that I cannot visit her? Peter, are you being serious? Are you telling me that you not only want to see Sally, but you want custody of her? Yes, I do. Peter, you are going on trial for murder. No judge will grant you custody now, and I very much doubt that you would be allowed even supervised visitation, since you have never even seen the child. I do not want my daughter in a foster home. Susan, there's got to be a way to stop that. Look at her picture. My God, she looks so forlorn. Peter realized there were tears in his eyes. I'll find a good nanny and beg the judge to let me have her. I may not go on trial for a year or more. You know how slow the court system is. I have never, ever been in trouble, not even any kid stuff while I was growing up. Susan. Hold on, she said softly. Peter, there is another solution, and one that I'm pretty sure the judge will accept. I want to request custody of Sally. Peter stared at Susan. You want Sally? Yes, I do. She is the sweetest little girl, and it is pathetic to see how starved she is for affection. And Peter, she is so smart. I guess her babysitters at least must have read to her, because she was picking out words in some of the books I brought. How many times have you seen her, Susan? Twice. The nurses let me take her out of the crib and hold her. The newspaper picture doesn't do her justice. She's a beautiful baby. She's the image of you. You would want my child? Peter, you seem to forget that for the 20 years we were married, I wanted a child more than anything else. I still do. Christina Johnson, the young nanny who probably saved Sally's life by rushing her to the hospital, came in to visit her while I was there. It's obvious that Sally is attached to Christina. She had such a big smile for her. Christina would be glad to take care of Sally again while I'm at work. And there's no problem about room. As you're well aware, there are 3 bedrooms in that apartment. We bought that apartment when we'd only been married a couple of years, Peter thought. Susan was pregnant, and we felt that we needed a bigger place. Then she miscarried 3 times. It broke her heart, but she said we still had each other, so we stayed in that apartment. And then I left her. You think you can get custody immediately? That she won't have to go into a foster home? He asked, his voice shaking. I will file for an emergent hearing before Sally is released from the hospital. Why would a judge turn me down? 46 isn't too old. My reputation is spotless. I have the room. As your ex-wife, I classify as a concerned relative, and I want her. The minute I saw her, I knew she would make up for all the heartbreak of losing the others. Her eyes suddenly moist, Susan looked at Peter. You are her father, of course. The judge will probably give you some input in this. Will you let me have Sally? Are you talking adoption or custody while my case is pending? Both. If I take her, I can't lose her. Susan, you can keep Sally, but only if I can visit her and can really have a part in my daughter's life. I can't lose her either. They were clasping each other's hands. Without letting go of Susan's entwined fingers, Peter said, I have started to get flashes of memory of that night. I wasn't going to tell anyone because I didn't want to give Greg up, but I'm not sure I'm strong enough to spend the rest of my life in prison, even for my brother." "Peter, what are you talking about?" "Greg's car was parked across the street from that bar. Renee knew him when we were seeing each other. If he offered her a ride, she'd take it." "Greg knew that she was extorting money from you, didn't he?" "Sure. He was at the foundation meeting when I asked for the $1 million loan, but he thought it was because she was going to reveal to the gossip columnists that I was Sally's father. That didn't upset him at all. His attitude was, so what? I didn't tell him at the time that there was a lot more to it." "Then why would he have been waiting outside the bar?" Susan asked. "I was desperate to get that money. After he turned me down, I called Pamela and told her that Renee was going to blow the whistle on Greg's insider trading. I knew Pamela could give me the money. Greg has put plenty in her name. She must have told him, and maybe it drove him over the edge." He paused. "Susan, I think my brother killed Renee." Peter shook his head. "How can I give him up?" he asked, his voice anguished. "How can I?" "How can you not?" Susan demanded. "But it's your decision to make and live with, Peter. I have to get back to the office. I'll see you later." At 2:30 on Tuesday, Carl Forrest went directly from the morgue, where he and Detective Whelan had viewed Scott Alterman's body, to headquarters to report to Chief Stanton. Whelan went from the morgue back to Alterman's apartment building to question the staff there. "Jim is trying to get a handle on Alterman's activities from the time he visited Monica Farrell on Thursday evening until he left his apartment late Saturday," Forrest told the chief.
"Carl, do you think this looks like Scott Alterman was behind the attempt on Dr. Farrell's life?" Stanton asked. "Does the medical examiner think he's dealing with a suicide?" "Too soon to tell. No marks on his body. We've contacted Alterman's parents and siblings. They haven't talked to him since last week. The M.E. thinks he may have been drugged before he fell into the river, or was pushed. We won't have the drug tests from the lab for at least a week. If he did order the hit on the doctor, he may have panicked and overdosed himself. On the other hand," Forrest speculated, "according to the doorman where Alterman left his apartment building on Saturday night, he was in good spirits." "Which tells us nothing," Stanton observed. "Sometimes when people decide to let go, they get a sudden sense of peace." "I'm wondering if Alterman wasn't a little wacky," Forrest said. "On Friday, in his office, his secretary and some of the other staff were talking about Monica Farrell almost being killed by the bus. Alterman told them he knew her and was going to prove that she was the heiress to a vast fortune." "That does sound wacky," Stanton agreed. "I really do think that he was the guy who hired Sammy Barber. I just wish we could nail that lowlife, too." "So do I, but—" Carl Forrest stopped in mid-sentence and pulled out his cell phone. "It's Whelan," he said, then answered it. "What's up?" Jack Stanton watched as a look of astonishment came over Forrest's face. "You mean that Alterman rented a car and driver and went to a cemetery in Southampton, then to Greg Gannon's house on Saturday?" Forrest asked incredulously. "I spoke to the driver," Whelan reported. "Alterman had found out that an old lady, Olivia Morrow, who died last Tuesday night, had gone there last Tuesday afternoon. He got in touch with the driver and hired him for the same drive as the Morrow woman. She told the driver she had grown up in a cottage on the Gannon property. The house still belongs to Greg Gannon, Peter Gannon's brother. The driver told Scott that Olivia Morrow didn't go into the house, but Scott Alterman did on Saturday afternoon and stayed for about an hour." "Okay, Jim, thanks. Has the driver agreed to come in and make a statement?" Forrest snapped the phone shut. "The driver can't wait to give us the details. Whelan said he's a real talker and is enjoying the situation." "I wish there were more like him," Stanton observed. "This woman Olivia Morrow who died last week, see what you can find out about her." 15 minutes later,
Forrest burst back into Stanton's office without knocking.
"Chief, you won't believe this. The person who found Morrow dead was Dr. Monica Farrell. She told the medical team that responded to the emergency call at the apartment that she had had an appointment with Olivia Morrow that evening. She told them that Morrow was going to reveal some important information to her about her grandparents. It seems Farrell's father was adopted and had no idea of his background."
The two detectives looked at each other.
"Maybe Scott Alterman wasn't wacky after all," Stanton said. "Maybe he had become dangerous to someone. And let's take a good look at Olivia Morrow's death. Find out who signed her death certificate."
Harvey Roth's normally calm voice was crackling with excitement when he phoned Peter Gannon.
"Peter, we have two big breaks. A credible witness is prepared to say he saw you walking down York Avenue alone just after you and Renee left the bar. He said Renee was already gone. Our guys found him this morning and he made a statement to the cops."
"Is that enough for reasonable doubt?" Peter asked.
"It's a big help, let me tell you. That and the fact that your clothes and car show no traces of Renee's presence."
"Thanks, Harvey. It's going to take some time to digest this."
"I can understand that. Peter, we're a long way from being sure of an acquittal when you come to trial. We still can't explain the money hidden in your desk and the shopping bag, but we are getting some breaks."
15 minutes later, Harvey Roth called back.
"Peter, I just spoke to Esther Chambers. She traced that decorator who ordered the desk with the false bottom in the drawer. The fact is, she ordered two of them. One was for you, the other for Dr. Langdon. The decorator says she absolutely did not discuss the secret compartment in the desk with you, but distinctly remembers telling Langdon and your sister-in-law, Pamela, about it. Very interestingly, the decorator also said she believed there was something going on between them."
Pam and Doug Langdon, Peter thought, his heart pounding. Of course it was possible that they were involved with each other. Would they have tried to stop Renee from exposing Greg's insider trading? It's possible. Of course it is. It makes sense. If the SEC ever goes after Greg, they'll grab all his assets to pay off all the investors who lost money because of him, and that would include all the money and property and jewelry he's given Pamela over the years. A huge sense of relief was running through him. I might easily have left a set of keys to my office at the foundation, he thought. Doug and Pam have both been there and know the layout. I never saw who was driving Greg's car. It might have been Doug. My brother may be a thief, but I don't believe he's a killer.
"Peter, are you still there?" Harvey Roth asked, his voice now anxious. "You bet I am," Peter said. "You bet I am."
At 3:30 p.m., the moment Greg Gannon had been dreading for a long time arrived. Two federal officers, their manner brusque, walked past the secretary who was sitting at Esther's desk and opened the door of his private office.
"Mr. Gannon, stand up and put your hands behind you. We have a warrant for your arrest," one of them said.
Suddenly infinitely weary, Greg obeyed. As he listened to his rights being read, he looked down at the wastebasket. He had shredded the papers Arthur Saling had signed that had given him control over his portfolio.
"One last small, decent thing to do," he thought grimly. "Everything is going to blow up now. They'll look into the foundation, too. We've been treating it like a piggy bank. We could all face charges on that. I know I'm going down, but I'm also going to hang Pam and Doug out to dry. I'm glad I finally found out about their little love nest on 12th Avenue. She probably has more jewelry stashed there. I don't want either one of them left with so much as a penny."
Another thought crossed his mind as he was led out of his office for the last time.
My brother's a murderer. I'm a thief. One of my sons is a public defender. I wonder if he'd care to represent either one of us. He doubted it.
At 6:30, the last of her small patients was gone. Monica went into her private office, where Detectives Forrest and Whelan and John Hartman had been patiently waiting. "Why don't we go into the reception area?" she asked. "You have to be careful not to trip over toys, but we'll have more room in there." When she had returned from the meeting at the Gannon Foundation, she had asked Nan to call John Hartman and ask him to stop at the office at around 6. Then halfway through the afternoon, Nan reported that Detectives Forrest and Whelan wanted to have another meeting with her. "I told them they'd just have to wait until 6 o'clock, Nan had reported. "They were nice about it." "Dr. Jenner will be coming over too," Monica had told Nan. Nan's delighted smile telegraphed to Monica that she too was aware of the gossip about Ryan and herself. Nan had tidied up the reception room. Without being asked, Forrest adjusted one of the couches so that they all sat facing each other. "Dr. Farrell," he began. The phone rang. Nan hurried to answer it. "It's Dr. Jenner," she said. Monica got up and walked quickly to take the receiver from Nan's hand. "Monica," Ryan said, "there's been a nasty accident on the West Side Highway, some head injuries. I'm waiting to see if I'm needed for surgery." "Of course. I'll call you back when I know how long I'll be here." He hesitated. "Unless it gets too late." "Call me back. I don't care what time it is," Monica said, then added, "I'm dying of curiosity about the lasagna." "I may never eat it again. I'll get back to you." Monica replaced the phone on the cradle, then went back to the reception room. John Hartman held a chair for her. As she sat down, she said to the detectives, "I'm glad you're here. There is something that I was going to give John, and I think it's just as well that I'm able to talk to all of you about it." Carl Forrest said, "Before we discuss that, Dr. Farrell, I am very sorry to have to tell you that the body of Scott Alterman was found in the East River this morning. It may or may not be a suicide, but we are beginning to believe his death may have had something to do with his belief that you are connected to the Gannon family." "Scott is dead?" Monica repeated. "Dear God! But only yesterday at this very time you were suggesting that he might have been behind the attempt to kill me." Forrest nodded. "Dr. Farrell, you told us yourself that he had been obsessed with you. You told us that he called you shortly after you reached home, when you were pushed in front of a bus. What you did not tell us is that he believed you might be the granddaughter of Dr. Alexander Gannon, which, of course, would put you in line to inherit much of the Gannon fortune." For a long minute, Monica could not speak. In a whirlwind of memory, she thought of being her best friend Joy's maid of honor at her wedding to Scott. She thought of how close she had been to both of them until after her father's death, when Scott started to bombard her with phone calls and passionate emails. "Scott was my father's attorney," Monica said, trying to choose her words carefully. "When my father became terminally ill and finally had to be placed in a nursing home, Scott handled all his affairs. My father was adopted and was always seeking to learn his background, to find his birth family. He was a researcher who late in life was a consultant in one of the labs in Boston founded by Dr. Alexander Gannon. The few years my father worked there, I was in medical school in Georgetown." She stopped as memories of trying to get back to Boston whenever she could possibly squeeze in a day or two, and her comfort in the fact that Joy and Scott had visited her father so frequently, raced through her mind. "As long as I can remember, my father would cut out pictures of people whom he thought he resembled and wonder if he was related to them," she said sadly. "It became a desperate need for him to discover his roots. I used to tease him about it. Shortly before he died, he became fixated on the notion that he bore a striking resemblance to pictures he had seen of Alexander Gannon. Scott took him seriously. I never did. Until today." Trying to keep her voice steady, Monica asked, "Nan, would you please print out the picture I took this morning on my cell phone?" She got up. "I have my father's picture in my wallet, but I have a larger one on my desk.
Let me get that one, and I'll show you exactly what I saw this morning." She walked into her private office and for a minute stood there, hugging herself tightly to stop trembling. Scott, she thought. Poor Scott. If someone killed him, it was because he was trying to help me, because he thought I would come into a fortune. She picked up her father's framed picture and carried it back to the reception room. Nan had already printed out the one she had taken of the portrait of Alexander Gannon. Monica laid them side by side on the table. As the detectives leaned over to study them, she said, "As you can see, the pictures are virtually interchangeable." Without taking her eyes off the picture, she said, "I think Scott Alterman lost his life trying to prove there was a blood relationship between Alexander Gannon and my father. And I also think that it doesn't stop there. I believe that Olivia Morrow, the woman who was about to reveal the names of my grandparents, may have died last Tuesday night because she confided to someone else that I was coming to visit her on Wednesday evening." "Who is that person?" Forrest asked sharply. Monica raised her head and looked directly across the table at him. "I believe Olivia Morrow told her cardiologist, Dr. Clayton Hadley, that she was going to give me proof that I am a Gannon descendant. Dr. Hadley is not only on the board of the Gannon Foundation, but he also visited Ms. Morrow late Tuesday evening. The next evening when I arrived at her apartment, she was dead." Monica turned to John Hartman. "I asked you to come here for a specific reason, and it ties into all of this." Once again, Monica went into her private office, and this time when she returned, she was carrying the plastic bag containing the pillow with the smear of blood that Sophie had taken from Olivia Morrow's apartment. She explained to them why Sophie had taken it, and described Hadley's response to Sophie about the missing pillowcase. Forrest took the bag from her. "You have the makings of a good detective, Dr. Farrell. You can be sure we'll take this to the lab right away." A few minutes later, they all left together. Declining John and Nan's invitation to have dinner, Monica got in a cab and went home. Thoroughly exhausted from the events of the day, she double-locked the door, walked back into the kitchen, and looked at the Afghan that was still draped over the glass half of the kitchen door. "When I put that up last night, it was because I was worried that Scott might harm me," she remembered. "And now he's dead because of me." As a sort of unconscious tribute to him, she took it down, carried it back into the living room, curled up on the couch, and pulled it over her. "Ryan may call any time," she thought. "I'll keep both phones right next to me and close my eyes. I don't think I'll fall asleep, but if I do, I just can't miss his call. I need him." She glanced at her watch. It was 8:15. Plenty of time to still have dinner if he can get away, she thought. At 9 o'clock, she awoke with a start. The buzzer to her apartment from the front door was being pushed repeatedly. The sharp, urgent jabs were terrifying to hear. Was the building on fire? She jumped up and ran to the intercom. "Who is this? What's the matter?" she demanded. "Dr. Farrell, this is Detective Parks. Detective Forrest has sent me to protect you. You must leave your apartment immediately. Sammy Barber, the man who tried to push you under the bus, was spotted in the alleyway behind your house. We know he has a gun and is determined to kill you. Get out of there now." Sammy Barber. In a moment of sheer panic, Monica thought of the bus bearing down on her. She ran to the table and grabbed her cell phone. Not bothering to look for the shoes she had kicked off when she lay down on the couch, she ran from the apartment, down the corridor, and flung open the outer door. A man in plain clothes was waiting there. "Hurry, hurry," he said urgently. He put his arm around her and began to rush her down the steps to a waiting car. There was a driver at the wheel, the engine was running, and the back door was open. Suddenly alarmed, Monica struggled to pull away from his iron grip and began to scream for help. He clasped a rough hand over her mouth and with violent force tried to shove her into the car. Dragging her legs and butting her head back against his chest,
She frantically tried to break away. "I'm going to die," she thought. "I'm going to die." It was at that moment, from somewhere nearby, she heard a command shouted through a bullhorn. "Let go of her now! Get your hands up! You're surrounded!" Monica felt herself being released, but was unable to keep her balance and fell backward on the sidewalk. As her would-be assailant and the driver were grabbed by a swarm of undercover officers, the cell phone she was still clutching rang. Too stunned to react except in a robot-like manner, she answered it. "Monica, are you all right? It's Ryan. The accidents weren't that bad. I'm leaving the hospital. Where shall I meet you?" "Home," Monica said, her voice breaking as strong arms lifted her to her feet. "Come over now, Ryan. I need you. Come over right now." It was Thursday morning, 2 days after Monica had been assaulted at her apartment. "Looks as though we got the whole rotten bunch of them," Detective Barry Tucker commented with satisfaction. He and his partner, Dennis Flynn, along with Detectives Carl Forrest and Jim Whelan, were at headquarters in the office of Chief Jack Stanton. They were rehashing the series of events since Tuesday night. When Dr. Hadley broke down and confessed the minute we walked into his office to question him, he told us that he knew we would be coming. He admitted he suffocated that poor old woman. He even handed over the bloody pillowcase before we asked for it," Flynn said. "Langdon isn't talking, but his girlfriend Pamela can't stop talking," Carl Forrest said, his voice scornful. "She knows she has no way out of this. Greg Gannon got suspicious of her and found out about the apartment she was keeping with Langdon. Renee Carter's purse and a card with that address written in Scott Alterman's handwriting were both there. Pamela admits that Carter got into the car with her and Langdon. They promised to pay her the other $900,000 that Carter was demanding, and she fell for it. She went back to the apartment with them. They gave her a drink with knockout drops, and then he strangled her. They kept her body there until they could safely dump it." Forrest picked up a glass of water and swallowed. "Pamela Gannon is one cold fish. She admits she gave Hadley and Langdon the orders to get rid of Olivia Morrow and Dr. Farrell. She also told us that Langdon had hired Sammy Barber to kill Monica Farrell. We got a search warrant for Barber's apartment and found a tape of him and Langdon talking about getting rid of Dr. Farrell, so they're both cooked. Not to mention Larry Walker, who tried to abduct Farrell outside her apartment. He said that Barber had hired him to kill her since there was too much heat on him. Sammy has taken off, but there's a warrant out for him. We'll find him." "Why was Scott Alterman ever fool enough to go to that apartment?" Stanton asked. "Pamela was in the Southampton house when he got there. She told him she was divorcing Greg, that he had been miserable to live with, and she had found proof that his uncle had an heir. Alterman walked into her trap that night. When he went to the apartment, she put just enough knockout drops in his drink to make him look drunk, and then Langdon hustled him down to the river. The poor guy never had a chance," Forrest answered. "Langdon planted the money and the shopping bag in Peter's office to set him up," he continued. "He went directly to Peter's private office after he killed Renee Carter. He never realized that Peter was sleeping it off in the next room. It's a good thing that Langdon didn't see him there, or I don't think he'd still be alive. Now, the way it looks, Greg Gannon will spend the next 20 years or so in prison. Everything he owns will be sold to pay back the investors he defrauded. Everything Pamela Gannon has will be taken from her. Not that she'll have any use for it. She's looking at several life sentences." "I'll take it from here, Jack," Barry Tucker said briskly. "The DA is going to dismiss the charges against Peter Gannon." He dropped his notebook in his pocket. "And we'll all get a few days off." "Oh, I forgot. Your wife likes your crooked smile," Forrest said. "Isn't that what you told somebody the other day?" "It seems more like a year ago. The pity is that even if she could manage to prove she's Alexander Gannon's granddaughter, Dr. Farrell probably will never see a nickel of the Gannon money. Langdon, Hadley, and Pamela Gannon have been hemorrhaging it into their own pockets. The foundation money that went into some of Peter Gannon's theater projects may cause him trouble with the IRS." Jack Stanton stood up. "Good job, all of you," he said. "Hopefully at least some of the money that Langdon and Hadley stole from the foundation will be recovered when they seize their assets. That means if Monica Farrell could actually prove she was the granddaughter, other properties like Alexander Gannon's home in Southampton may be hers. But I gather at this point she can't prove anything. Look-alike pictures don't cut the mustard in court." "Carl, does anyone know who Dr. Farrell's grandmother actually was?" Dennis Flynn asked. "Dr. Hadley told us that she was Olivia Morrow's older cousin, a young woman who later became a nun and is presently being considered for beatification by the Catholic Church. He thinks that the file with the proof of her relationship with Gannon was destroyed by Morrow before she died." Stanton looked from one to the other of his detectives. "Obviously, all of this has to be included in the detective reports. Can you imagine the gossip Dr. Farrell will have to deal with when it comes out? As it is, she's already survived 2 attempts on her life. If our guys hadn't been covering her outside her apartment Tuesday night, she'd be in the river just like Scott Alterman." Stanton took a long breath.
Okay, guys, now it's time to do the paperwork and wrap this up.
On Thursday afternoon, with enormous pride, Tony Garcia washed and polished his newly acquired Cadillac. With loving hands, he vacuumed the interior and wiped the dashboard and door handles with a damp cloth. Finally, he opened the trunk, and it was then that he remembered that he had not yet looked to see if the file that Olivia Morrow had asked him to place in it was still there. With absolute shock, he had read that Dr. Hadley had admitted killing Miss Morrow. The nicest lady you'd ever want to know, he thought. Fearful that he might lose out on the car, he'd phoned his brother-in-law and been reassured that as long as he kept the receipt for the cash he had handed Hadley, there shouldn't be any problem getting the car transferred to his name. The trunk was deep, and the lap robe that had been covering the manila file was almost as dark as the black interior. I wonder if that file is still there, Tony thought, as he bent down and leaned into the trunk. Dr. Hadley had said that the garage attendants took out any personal stuff that Ms. Morrow had in the car, but maybe they didn't bother looking under the blanket. He lifted it up, and it was there, the manila file. He pulled it out and held it in his hand, wondering what he should do with it. Maybe he should turn it over to the cops. He walked up the 3 flights to their apartment. Rosalie was out in the park with the baby. Tony left the file on the table, changed, went back downstairs, drove the car to the service station where his buddy let him park it cheap, then headed for the Waldorf where he was working at one of the black tie affairs. When he got back home at 1 a.m, Rosalie was sitting at the table, reading. Her face transfixed, she said, "Tony, this file belongs to Dr. Monica. It has so many letters from her grandmother to Miss Morrow's mother and proof of Dr. Monica's grandparents. Dr. Monica's grandmother was a nun. When you read the letters she wrote about giving up her own child and spending her life taking care of other children, you'll want to cry." She wiped her eyes. "Tony, these letters were written by a saint." On Friday afternoon, Monica and Ryan drove to Metuchen to give testimony in the cause of the beatification of Sister Catherine Mary Kerner. Monica had taken the day off and had hoped to simply have a quiet morning before Ryan picked her up. But when Tony Garcia learned from Nan that Monica would not be in the office, he rushed to her apartment. Still in her robe, she answered the door. "I won't come in, Dr. Monica," Tony said. "But I couldn't wait another second to get this file to you. In fact, Rosie thought that I should bring it up to you at 1 o'clock this morning, if you can believe it." "Nothing can be that urgent." Monica smiled as she took the file from him. "Dr. Monica, believe you me, it is urgent," Tony said simply. "You'll understand when you read it." With a quick smile, he was gone. Puzzled, Monica sat down at the table, poured a cup of coffee, and opened the file. She could see that it was composed mostly of letters, and a quick glance told her that the early ones had been written in the 1930s. Puzzled by why Tony had felt it was so important for her to read the file right away, she decided to start with the earliest letter. Then she saw the name on the letterhead. Alexander Gannon. The date was March 2nd, 1934. My darling Catherine, how can I possibly find the words to beg your forgiveness? There are none. The thought that you were leaving in the morning to enter the convent, the knowledge that all hope had ended that you would change your mind, overwhelmed me with my need for you. I am so ashamed. Last night I could not sleep, knowing that I was losing you. Finally, I got up and walked from the house to the cottage. I knew that the door was never locked and that Regina and Olivia would be asleep upstairs. I had no intention of coming in, I swear it. Then I simply wanted to be near you one more time, and so I came into your room. You in your sweet innocence were sleeping. Oh, Catherine, forgive me. Forgive me. There will never be anyone in my life except you. Examining my conscience and my soul,
I believe that it was my hope that if you were to become with child, you would be forced to marry me. Oh, Catherine, I beg your forgiveness. If that were to happen, I implore you to become my wife. Alex.
The next letter was from the Mother Superior of Catherine's convent.
Dear Regina, I am returning the letter Alexander Gannon gave to you to send Catherine. She does not wish to read it, but I did tell her it contained his profound apology. Please instruct him never again to contact Catherine.
8 months later, there was another letter from the Mother Superior.
Dear Regina, this morning in Dublin, at 5 a.m., your cousin Catherine gave birth to her son. The baby was immediately registered in the name of my nephew and his wife, Matthew and Anne Farrell. They have already sailed from Ireland with the infant. It took great courage for Catherine to give up her baby, but she has steadfastly maintained that she must follow the calling that she has always known was hers. She does not want Alexander Gannon to ever learn about the child, because she fears he would want to raise him on his own. It was a difficult and long labor, and it became necessary for the doctor to perform cesarean surgery. When she recovers her health, Catherine will return to the novitiate in Connecticut and resume her role as a postulant.
Sister Catherine is my grandmother, Monica thought, stunned. Alexander Gannon is my grandfather. For the next 2 hours, she read and reread the letters. Most of them were from Catherine to Olivia's mother, Regina. Some of them referred to her child. Regina, there are times when my arms ache for the baby I gave up, and yet when I reach into a crib and pick up an abandoned little one, a child damaged in body or mind, I feel that need. Mother Superior placed my baby with a fine family. I know that. I can't know any more than that. He belongs to the people who are now his parents, and I am living the life that God intended for me. I tell my young sisters that they must realize that when they enter the convent, they do not surrender their human emotions, which I suspect countless people believe is the case. I tell them there will be times when they see the joy of a mother with a child that they may wish with all their hearts that they could know that joy. I tell them that there are times of loneliness when they may see a husband and wife obviously content in their marriage and know that they might have chosen that life. And then I remind them that there is no joy so deep as that of surrendering all human emotion to the God who granted them to us. All of Catherine's letters were similar. Her eyes glistening with tears, Monica realized the struggles of the nun who had been her grandmother to open yet another hospital, to beg funds for urgently needed medical equipment. Dear Regina, polio is rampant. It breaks the heart to see the little ones in iron lungs, unable to breathe on their own, their limbs wasted. It was the call from Ryan that startled Monica into awareness of the time. "I'll be about 10 minutes late, love. There's a lot of traffic," he said. It was 11:15. They were due to be in Metuchen at 1 o'clock to testify at the beatification hearing. Monica rushed to shower and dress, but took the time to scan the letter from Alex Gannon to Catherine and the letter from Mother Superior to Regina Morrow so she could keep electronic copies. When Ryan called again to say that he was waiting outside in the car, she said, "Ryan, let me drive. There's something I want you to read." Monsignors Kelly and Fell and Laura Shearing were waiting for them when they arrived, barely on time. Monica introduced them to Ryan, then said, "I have something very important to show you, but if you don't mind, I'd prefer to do it after we give our testimony." "Of course," Monsignor Kelly said. His voice firm and sure, under sacred oath, with quiet intensity, Ryan testified that as a neurosurgeon, he could find no medical explanation for Michael O'Keefe's cancerous brain tumor to have disappeared. "Nor will anyone else find an explanation," he said. "I only wish that there were more miracles granted to the agonized parents who are losing their children to cancer." When Monica testified, she said, "I cannot understand why I was so resistant to the idea that the power of prayer was the cause of Michael's return to health. I was a witness to the absolute act of faith of his mother when I told her he was terminally ill. It was arrogant of me to be so dismissive of her faith, especially since the proof of it is her 8-year-old healthy little boy." It was only after she had completed answering their questions and Monsignor Kelly had thanked them for coming that Monica laid the file marked Catherine on his desk. "I think I would prefer that you read this after I leave," she said. "Then, if you wish, we can talk again. But if it is determined that Sister Catherine is proposed for beatification, I would like to be invited to the ceremony." "Of course." Monsignor Kelly stood up. "Dr. Jenner, perhaps you'd like to see a picture of Sister Catherine." "Yes, I would." "Dr. Farrell, I don't think you saw this picture when you were here. It was taken when she was quite young, in her early 30s, I believe." Monsignor Kelly reached into his desk and took out the photograph of a nun in traditional habit, smiling as she held 2 babies in her arms. Ryan looked from the picture to Monica. "Sister Catherine was a beautiful woman," he said as he handed it back. He and Monica did not speak until they were in the car. "After they read the file, they'll take that picture out and look again," he said. "Your resemblance to her is unmistakable, especially the smile." Before he turned on the ignition, he said, "Alexander Gannon loved Catherine so much that he never looked at another woman. I understand how he felt. That is how much I love you." 1 week later. It feels a lot different than the last time I discharged Sally from the hospital, Monica thought, remembering Renee Carter's impatient order to Christina Johnson to hurry up and dress the baby because she was late for lunch. Today she was releasing her into the welcoming arms of Susan Gannon, who had come to the hospital alone. "Peter is waiting for us at my apartment," she explained. "He said that he was afraid that if he met her for the first time here, he'd break down and cry." As she nuzzled Sally's cheek, Susan smiled and added, "Which is exactly what I expect him to do when I get this little girl home. He's frantic to meet her. Christina will start to work for me tomorrow morning. Peter and I both wanted Sally to ourselves today." "I know what Peter has been through," Monica said. "I hope everything goes well for him from now on." "He's going to have to face some tax issues, but no criminal charges," Susan said frankly. "He'll weather them. It's a big relief for all of us that Greg and the others may plead guilty. I'll be very grateful if we don't have to go through so many criminal trials." "So will I," Monica agreed fervently. "The last thing I want to do is to have to testify in court. It would especially sicken me to have to look at Dr. Hadley." Susan hesitated, then said, "Monica, now that you have proof that you are Alexander Gannon's granddaughter, I hope they'll be able to recover for you some of the money that is rightfully yours." "We'll see what happens," Monica said quietly. "If they do, most of it will go toward the pediatric center we need here. I am thrilled to know my background, and it is a joy to discover that Sally is my second cousin. No wonder she's always been so special to me. The great sadness is that 3 people died because of that money." "You are going to come and see her?" Susan asked, "and I mean regularly, as family. I promise you'll like Peter. He's going to be around a lot, and remember, he's your cousin too." Monica reached out and took Sally from Susan's arms. They walked down the corridor, then, with a final hug, she handed the baby back to Susan. "Bye-bye, Moni," Sally called as they got into the elevator and the door closed behind them. She felt a hand on her arm. It was Ryan. "Don't feel too bad. One of these days, you'll have your own," he said. Her smile radiant, Monica looked up at him.
I know, she said. I know.